Yeah. Who is this again? Oh, yeah, I did email you guys. Yeah, you were looking for a candidate. Yeah, I think he would be perfect. Yeah, he weighs about 190, but he's really strong. He's healthy. Yeah, he works out every day. Yeah, he's a 6 foot. Okay, yeah. When would you need him to start? Next week. Okay, next week. And what was the pay again? 50,000. That's what I thought. And then what about meals? Meals. Oh, so you have a private chef. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, he can definitely do that next week. Yep. We'll be there Monday. Thank you. Talk to you later. Bye. Babe, I just signed you up. We're going to get paid $50,000.
God is good. Did you get us a brand deal?
Yeah. $50,000 is what you're going to get paid.
50 grand. I told you, if dreams do come true.
Well, it's not really it's you, because they were looking for only men.
Our men.
Yeah, 100 men.
Our contents, both of us, though.
Yeah, I know, but they need 100 men, 100 strong men, so I can't do it.
We got to split the 50K?
No, each one of y'all will get 50K, and you have a chef that's going to feed you and train you.
All of the 100 men. Every single 100 men. So I'm getting 50 grand.
You're getting 50 grand. Yep. And it's 100 men, and all y'all have to do is fight one gorilla. Yeah, it's 100 of you. Babe, it's 100 of you and one gorilla. That's easy work.
Babe, you did not sign me up to fight a gorilla.
Babe, it's 50 grand.
You did not fight me.
It's 50 grand and there's 100 of you. You can do that.
Spend it. I ain't even gonna get to spend it, baby.
Babe, it's 100 men and one gorilla. You can do this.
Who's gonna go first? Which man has to go first?
You're gonna have to get the details when you get there.
Oh my gosh! You gotta call them back. I'm not fighting a gorilla.
No, I can't do that. I already signed the contract. They emailed it to me.
No, what?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Vibe program. I am your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Lawgic. Woo! Today was a rough day in court. Not gonna kid you. This was a hard one today. This was a tough one. Today was tough. Where's my notes? Where do my notes? I got them here somewhere. They're definitely here somewhere. Yeah, today was a tough one. But I'm gonna get to that. After we cover law and politics. I got a lot here as to what happened with Cassie testifying. We had a little bit of cross-examination, and then Cassie testified, and well, let's do that. But before that, we need to talk politics. There's a bunch of stories that my good new co-host here, Jim Saltala, from Jim Tells Ya.
From Jim Tells You, and I just want to say thank you to everybody. Yesterday, you showed me all the love in the world and pushed me all the way past 500 subs, past 600 subs. So thank you very much.
Yes. We got to get you over 1,000 so we can start getting you that. We start getting you some of that good love, the passive love. That's what we got. That's next. That's next on the agenda. We'll get there soon. I'm confident. We're gonna get there soon. Anyway, we have you got a bunch of stories that we're gonna cover.
I do have a bunch of stories.
Right. So I put them in there. We got that Wisconsin judge.
We got this Wisconsin judge. I have a short video talking about the Wisconsin judge. I also have an AP story, and then I found the actual indictment.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh, sweet. We got to do a little law. All right, let's do that. All right, let's go.
Sue live now from Fox. We do have some breaking news right now to report. Live picture there out of Milwaukee, a foggy Tuesday afternoon there. We're learning. I want to put this tweet up from our colleague there at Fox 6, Jason Calvi. And he has a screenshot there, a photo of the order itself, the grand jury indicting a suspended Milwaukee County Judge, Hannah Duggan, on charges she helped a defendant escape. Federal immigration enforcement. This was a story we brought you about 2 weeks ago, and now there's a new development, a grand jury indicting the judge. Remember, the state Supreme Court there in Wisconsin.
It's a little loud. I don't know if you can turn it down and drop.
I can turn it down.
Yeah, if you can turn it down and drop, it's a little loud. So I think it's about its audio levels like probably like killing people compared to us.
Okay.
So yeah, but let keep going. This is
suspending Duggan from her roles, from her duties as a Superior Court judge there. In the meantime, you see the New York Post headline. But in the meantime, the Associated Press has it as follows, that this federal grand jury,
she looks like
indicting
a
a
professional
Wisconsin
Karen,
judge there,
she?
Hannah Duggan, accused of helping a man evade immigration authorities.
This is the Karen haircut, right? That is the Karen haircut, right? I mean, it's oh my gosh.
Is this one of the judges that worked for the Catholic Charities before becoming a judge, if I'm not mistaken?
Did she? Yeah. I missed that. I didn't see that.
Maybe I'm confusing it to another. They all work for somebody, it seems.
Yeah. Well, look, to become a judge, you actually have to be politically connected, which is why it's kind of funny that they say, we're going to keep judges in there for some sort of like lifelong term, when the only way you can possibly become, because they're above politics, when the only way you can become a judge is to be politically connected. Either you're appointed by someone who's been politically elected, or you're rubbing elbows with the right people from the Democratic Party if you're in a deep blue city. And no Republican is ever being elected a judge in New York City. That's not happening. We elect our judges, and the Democrats run unopposed because it's known that there's no point in running. So a cup of water, you could have literally the name up there, total jackass as being the person's name. That first name total, last name jackass, and that will win. As long as it's a Democrat. So no one bothers running against total jackass or anyone who's got names which better hide what they actually are. Not that there's any in the New York court, obviously, as a member,
they're all tip top.
Right. No, tip top, A number one. There's a website called the Robing Room, which actually enables lawyers from New York to rate judges in different areas, where you can actually get a little bit of a feel as from like where litigators, can anonymously come in there and just sort of talk about some of their experiences with some of these judges as to like, and some of them are great. Many of them are great. I'm talking about the state court judges, not the federal judges. Some of them are really amazing judges, but a handful of them really get blasted in the Robing Room. So it's not like that just in New York. I'm sure in other jurisdictions where they elect their judges. So in order to get on the ticket to be the Democratic candidate, you have to be rubbing elbows with the right people. The point that I'm getting at is every judge only becomes a judge by being exceedingly political and rubbing the right elbows. And then we say, oh, now that you're a judge, you're apolitical, which is asinine. It's completely.
In some states, aren't all the judges appointed by the governor, and then they have to get voted back in or something like that? I think that's right. I think that's right. So definitely those would be political because they're.
That's what I'm saying. They all are. Every Supreme Court justice, every federal court justice, every appointment that goes up to the circuit court, all of them, that comes courtesy of the executive branch. So and then the Senate has to confirm you. So yeah, they all know. It's like this is like the myth that it's apolitical is ridiculous. If it's apolitical, then why do you have half the political aisle screaming about the constituency of the court? Because everyone knows that's crap. It's not true. We wish it was, but it's just not true. A potato can win in New York as long as there's a D on it. Case in point, AOC. Yeah, there you go. But that's not. I'm talking about the judiciary. I'm saying how even the judiciary, everyone understands, that politics will reign in legislature, and that some areas you're just gonna win as long as you win the primary. I'm talking about the fact that the judiciary is supposed to be beyond politics, and yet it is no less political than anything else. So I also want to appreciate Nana Nose over here dropping five good Lawgic members, 5 new members of the following. Welcome to the following. Who'd you bring in here? We got Dissident Porcupine 7-3, MDW, Gruff Money, Trisha the Traveler, and a 5th person who had jumped on me just now. And have Tome. It's spelled Tome. That's a tome in English. That's a tome. All right. Well, anyway, welcome to the following. Well, the following, we got cookies. We do. We don't have Kool-Aid. No Kool-Aid. Zero Kool-Aid. You can look around. You can search. We actually had someone come in here who was like a Kool-Aid pesticide type of remover and just was cleaning out, saying there was one guy who actually had Kool-Aid. He's been properly chastised. So, because it's not at all a cult type of cult. So welcome to the following. Yeah. And thank you, Nanonos. Appreciate your support. All right. So let's get back into Hannah Duggan.
Allowing the case against her to continue. So you'll remember the arrest of Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Duggan escalated a clash between President Trump, his administration, and local authorities over the president's sweeping immigration crackdown. Democrats have accused the Trump administration of trying to make a national example of Duggan to chill judicial opposition to the crackdown. Now, prosecutors charged her in April via complaint with concealing an individual to prevent arrest and obstruction. In the federal criminal justice system, prosecutors can initiate charges against a defendant directly by filing a complaint or present evidence to a grand jury and let that body decide whether to issue charges. That is what happened here. Now, a grand jury still reviews charges brought by a complaint.
Let's pause it here because I don't need to get all 4.5 minutes of that. But okay. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on this before we pull up the indictment itself. What are your first thoughts?
I think it's good. I don't like what they're saying, how it's being used to chill the judiciary's pushback against the crackdown. I mean, it's not up to the judiciary to push back on legal actions taken by the executive.
Yeah, that's not your role. You never were. No one signed you up for that. No one appointed you for that. Yeah, it's this notion that is conferred upon people who get into positions of power that they have some sort of royalty once they're in that position, whether it's a robe or member of the legislature, that like they're part of some sort of special class, because that's how everyone treats them, and they start to think that their own feces don't stink. So then that they can do no wrong and no one's ever going to hold them accountable. To me, that's the most important part of this. Whether she gets convicted or not is almost beyond the point. It's almost beside the point. I want to chill the judiciary from thinking that they have some sort of role in rejecting the federal authority. I mean, it's asinine. So I'm glad there's the perp walk there. I'm glad that judges across the country who might get a notion to walk in her footsteps understand where those footsteps lead, which is expensive criminal defense bills and potentially ending up in jail. I want them to see those footsteps. They saw her footsteps. So where's that go? Oh yeah, that goes to County Clink.
I remember seeing the FBI raiding Roger Stone's house at 5 a.m. with CNN there with cameras watching it with armed people. I remember seeing Navarro in leg chains getting dragged out of an airport over what exactly?
Still don't know. Yeah. No, that is part of the points of the perp walk, is we want to like embarrass you, but it's also sending a message. And yeah, so I'm definitely glad that she's been indicted and we got the perp walk, because I do think we'll never know the impact, right? Because in theory there could be 100 judges across the country, different counties, people we never heard of, like we never heard of Hannah Duggan until a couple of weeks ago, right? So there could be 100 Hannah Duggans out there that now are thinking twice and not going to go through the same steps. Whereas if she had gotten away with it and no charges being brought, then we would see dozens more start to walk in her footsteps.
There was one, I remember, I think it was in Philly. There was a judge that did something towards the end of Trump's last term.
Yeah,
and they charged him, but Biden came in and they dropped the charges or did something and made it go away, basically. So
yeah, and the problem there was it was near the end of his term, so It's almost like here it's at the very start of Trump's administration. So you would hope that, and this is really the most important period, because you're expecting that this is, during the next year or two is when we're really going to be pushing really hard in trying to clean out the mess that Biden. The crap left all over the bowl by Biden when he completely missed the water, if you pardon the analogy. So yeah, Anyhow, let's get that indictment. You have that up. You brought that up here. Good. Let's get this up here. All right. United States of America versus Hannah Duggan. How many pages? It's probably not too long, right?
Just 2 pages.
Oh, beautiful. All right. Grand jury charges that on or about April 18th, just one size bigger.
I don't know
For the old people in the back.
They won't let me.
All right, we're good. On or about April 18, 2025, in the state in the state and Eastern District of Wisconsin, Hannah C. Duggan knowingly concealed EFR, a person for whose arrest a warrant and process had been issued under the provisions of a law of the United States so as to prevent the discovery and arrest of EFR. I feel like I'm when I'm reading these initials, I literally feel as if I was like, this is when I was sitting in the ophthalmologist and he was like, okay, read the next line.
Well,
So EFR.
Hold on. Hold on.
Oh my God, that's not going to work. That's definitely not going to work.
Hold on.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Better?
A little bit, yeah. After notice and knowledge of the fact that a warrant and process had been issued for the apprehension of EFR. So in other words, you had the knowledge, and in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1071, I'm totally pulling that up. I'll pull that myself. 18 U.S.C. We'll look at that in a moment. 1071. Concealing a person from arrest. So, in fact, and the grand jury further charges that on about April 18, 2025, in the state and Eastern District of Wisconsin, did corruptly endeavor to influence, obstruct, and impede the due and proper administration of law under which a pending proceeding was being had before a department and agency of the United States, namely the administrative arrest of EFR, for purposes of removal proceedings conducted by the United States Department of Homeland Security, meaning she knew that there was this proceeding coming there, by committing affirmative acts to assist EFR to evade arrest, including confronting members of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Task Force and falsely telling them they needed a judicial warrant to effectuate the arrest of EFR, which that doesn't sound okay. Upon learning that they had no administrative warrant for EFR's arrest, directing all identified members of the ICE task force to leave the location of the planned arrest, which was a public hallway outside the room. You got to leave the public hallway and go to the chief judge's office, addressing EFR's Milwaukee County Circuit Court criminal case off the record. So she's really working hard to secrete him away, saying, you can come into my chambers and we'll deal with that there. While ICE task force members were in the chief judge's office. And so I don't know where she took him to have his off the record thing because it wasn't in her office. And directing EFR's counsel to exit courtroom 615 through a non-public jury door. So we're going to basically give you access to a room to an area that no one's supposed to have access to other than for designated purposes, which was certainly not one of those designated purposes. And advising EFR's counsel that EFR could appear by Zoom for his next court date in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1505. I don't know why they don't have obstruction of a court proceeding. I don't understand why they don't have obstruction. They should have an obstruction charge on her. I don't know why they don't. Why don't you have that?
Well, I mean, she was acting in her. I mean, it's kind of hard to charge a judge, right, for stuff they're doing while on the bench, isn't? I mean, they have kind of immunity unless it's like fraud or bribery, right?
Oh, there you go. We do have that is 1505 is obstruction of proceedings. Look at that. I thought they were going to use the other one, but the other one is real. The one that came up with all the J6ers. I'm going to pull up here. I'm going to pull that out for a moment.
Okay,
We'll pull up mine over here, which is the actual statute. So the first one she's charged with is 18 U.S.C. 1071, concealing a person from arrest, which says, whoever harbors or conceals any person for whose arrest a warrant or process has been issued, because there's no warrant here, that's what she was screaming about, or process has been issued, meaning like this situation here, under the provisions of any law in the United States, so as to prevent his discovery and arrest after notice knowledge of the fact that a warrant or process has been issued for the apprehension of such person, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. So she's got a maximum of a year for that, except that the warrant process issued on a charge of felony or after conviction of such person in the offense, punishment shall be a fine on this title or imprisonment for not more than 5 years. So this is not a felony. This would be 1 year. And that's what she would be looking for under 18 U.S.C. 1071. 1071. Now, just to tell you potential defenses she may raise is that Supreme Court has said it's not considered putting them under arrest and when you're detaining them for purposes of removal through deportation. So she might try and say that, well, if it's not that's not considered arrest, so I don't have that. But it's warrant or process. Its process has been issued. So, yeah. I don't think that. I'm just trying to think of potential responses she may have. I haven't researched this area of law. Obviously, we just opened this up right now.
Who would be like all the people that were blocking the entrances of the ICE facility in New Jersey the other day, and like keeping them from bringing a vehicle in? Wouldn't that be the same thing? They're interfering and
potentially. I mean, you could say that they might have a defense that they didn't have notice that this person was called in. But I mean, a reasonable person would say that if ICE is bringing someone in, they almost certainly have proper process that's been served. If you to assume that there isn't, it's a matter of actually issuing those arrests. That's an interesting thought. Very interesting thought. 18 U.S.C. 1505 is obstruction of proceedings before departments, agencies, and committees. Whoever with intent to avoid, evade, prevent, or obstruct compliance in whole or in part with any civil investigative demand duly and properly made under the Antitrust Civil Process Act, which that's not this, willfully withholds measures. I don't think it's the Antitrust Civil Process Act. Willfully, I'm not sure what the antitrust. What the heck is that? I'm going to assume. Let's go a little further. Willfully withholds, misrepresents, removes from any place, conceals, covers up, destroys, mutilates, alters, or by other means falsifies any document material, interrogatories, or all testimony which is the subject of such a man, or attempts to do so, or solicits not to do so, or, let me go in the next paragraph, whoever corruptly, or by threats of force, or by any threatening letter or communication, influences, obstructs. This is the part that we're focusing on here. So ignore paragraph 1, because that's not going to be relevant here. And
maybe they just mean the Civil Process Act. Is that just saying like if you're interfering with the civil court?
But this is antitrust as opposed to immigration. I think it's the or part we're focusing on here. So whoever, let's start there and assume that that's where we're going. Whoever corruptly, because we're saying she corruptly was misstating the law, or by threats of force or by any threatening letter or communication, influences, obstructs, or impedes, or endeavors to influence, obstruct, or impede the due and proper administration of law under which any pending proceeding is being had for any department or agency in the United States. That seems like where we are right here. That's the sweet spot where we are. Or the due and proper exercise of the power of inquiry under which any inquiry investigation can be had by either House, etc., which were not there, shall be fined on this title in prison not more than 5 years, or if the offense involves international domestic terrorism, in prison not more than 8. So we're looking potentially here at 5 years for this charge. This is the scary one for her. And frankly, it sounds like she may have problems.
That sounds like a felony.
5 years, it does sound like it's a low-level felony, yes. It does sound like
the other 8 years, if anybody who interferes with the stuff with like the TDA or the MS-13 guys could be getting 8 years.
Yeah. I think 5 years. I think anything more than a year is a felony. So, it's probably a low-level felony. Wow, go get her. And this one, I think she's going to struggle. I think she may struggle. She corruptly or by threats of force by any threatening letter or communication. So the threatening communication is she's telling them they got to leave the public hallway there. And she's obstructing by saying, go to Zoom, get out through the jury door. I think she got problems. I'm really hopeful that, it's nice we got the indictment. The indictment is the key, but getting the icing on the cake, because we have the cake, and the cake is the essence. You need the cake. Without cake, it's almost not a birthday. So we got the cake. The icing is the conviction, and I think we got a good chance of getting the icing here too, assuming that.
Is it like, was it like 80 or 90% of all federal cases are handled through a plea agreement?
That's true.
Something?
That's true. She's more likely to plead because she realizes she got 4 years to the next potential administration could save her oversized behind. So yes, this is nice. And from the federal the federal government's perspective, if she pleads down to, let's say, 2 years, right? That sends enough of a message. It sends enough of a message. You know, if they tell her, we'll give you 2 years, we'll give you nice facilities, we'll put you in Club Fed, but we want everyone in the world to know that you got 2 years in prison. And you'll probably be out in 18 months. That sends the message. That it's like, you know, don't play around here. And that's likely, I would think, an offer she's probably going to get. Who knows? Go get her, Bondi. Go get her. Julio Scissors hit me with 20. God bless you, brother. Thank you so much. Felzu, buy a hat for your hat. Jim the Hat Merchant. Yeah, your hat needs a hat there. It's looking a little.
No, it's because this is a Mr. Medicare hat, and that's what he does. He says, buy a hat for your hat. That's his whole thing. So his name is Jim Medicare. So that's what that is.
I gotcha. Steelman. I like how you spelled it that way because instead with 2 E's. My gardener needs to cut my grass, and I was helping. Maybe the EFR is obviously someone who's going to be very good at landscaping. That's potentially a defense that she's got there. Anyhow, I think that this case is just is kind of delicious, and you love to see. We're always complaining that the DOJ isn't issuing any indictments. So here you go. Score one for you.
Would you consider this to be a crime of moral turpitude or no?
No.
No.
Now, moral turpitude is implying like you're lacking humanity. That's what when we talk about moral turpitude, we're basically saying that you are completely immoral. Every crime has some level of immorality. Stealing, even to feed your kids, has a level of more immorality that you're not recognizing societal boundaries as far as food. So that has some level of it. But moral turpitude generally implies that you don't have any form of human morality here that we can see based on the actions that, you know, where someone does something like, you know, like recreates the movie, Saw. Like that's a crime of moral turpitude.
No, I was talking about like how they consider for like a law license when they say if you commit a crime of moral turpitude, they take your license away, which I always thought it was like fraud or.
I see what you're saying. So yeah, there is that notion as far as if you're doing something fraudulent. I don't know that's. I've never really researched the word turpitude. Now you got me all curious because I would think it'd be fraud or moral turpitude. Given my understanding of the word, let me see what we got here. Turpitude means depravity, wickedness. Yeah. So that's my source here. So I'm gonna go with that being not the case over here.
I had one of them word of the day calendars, and I tried to use the words.
Well, now you covered it. You did. So good job, you all around. All right. Let me just do a quick check here, make sure that I didn't miss anything. We're good. We're good in the ghetto. Okay, good. All right. Let's move on to the next thing that we got, which was
this one ties into another one, so I thought we'd do this one first.
Do it. I'm trying to add this. I gotta remove this and add to the stage. Fighting over criminalization. Was this one? No, this was me. That's what I want. But that was you. You were in the right one.
Yeah,
okay,
right
fine.
one.
All right, fighting over criminalization and federal regulations. Executive order from May 9th, 2025. By authority vested in me as president by the Constitution, law states America is hereby ordered. The United States is drastically over-regulated. Indeed. How so? Tell us, Donald. The Code of Federal Regulations contains over 48,000 sections, stretching over 175,000 pages, far more than any citizen can possibly read, let alone understand. Worse, many carry potential criminal penalties for violations. The situation has become so dire that no one, likely including those charged with enforcing our criminal laws at the DOJ, knows how many separate criminal offenses are contained in the Code of Federal Regulations, with at least one source estimating hundreds of thousands of such crimes. Many of these regulatory crimes are strict liability offenses, meaning the citizens need not have guilty mental state to be convicted of a crime. Strict liability just means if you did it, you're convicted. You
That's
might
the
not
old
have
saying,
known.
ignorance of the law is no defense.
Precisely. That's precisely what it's referencing there. We're going to keep it. Let's do it like this. This is the best way to do it. So, yes, that is, it's the action you're doing, not your mental state. Status quo is absurd and unjust. It allows the executive branch to write the law in addition to executing it. Meaning, our different federal agencies can all of a sudden come up with some statute that no one's heard of in the last 75 years and be like, oh, you did that. It's the law in the books. We're charging you. Situation could lend itself to abuse and weaponization by providing government officials tools to target unwitting individuals. It privileges large corporations, which can afford to hire expensive legal teams to navigate complex regulatory schemes and fence out new market entrants over average Americans. It's true. If you're a corporation, you can sit there and you can get people to just researching the stupidest laws possible and waste thousands of dollars in just the research alone, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and basically try to figure out how to use loopholes in the law to your benefit and to the detriment of your competitors, which is not the basis of why we have law, to create loopholes for large corporations that are wealthier in order to enable them to get a better stranglehold on their wealth. Worse yet, and something he doesn't mention here in this EO, is it ends up affording a broad license to the judiciary. Because if you have some old statute out there, it gives a lot of latitude to the judiciary, saying that's never been enforced, especially. Do I like this law? I'll find loopholes around it. I'm going to pretend it's not there, or no one's really enforcing it. Since the law ends up being, how things are done, if they want to enforce it, they can, and if they choose not to, it's not too hard to find bases to reject a law that no one is generally looking at, even if it's called to your attention, if you're so inclined to disregard that law. And that means that the judiciary is basically writing their own law as well. So you have the executive branch, the federal agencies, which are writing their own law, deciding what they want to enforce, and that even if that includes enforcing statutes that no one's ever heard of in human and living history, or it gives the judiciary power to decide which laws they like, which ones they don't, which ones they want to work around because there's not too much precedent on it, because it doesn't really come up that often, versus those that they are going to be like, oh yeah, that's the law, I'm following the law. So it creates these avenues for people to act corruptly, and the more that Trump can do to curtail avenues for powers that be to exercise those powers corruptly, the healthier our country becomes. So what policy we have on this? The purpose of the order is to ease regulatory burden on everyday Americans and ensure no American is transformed into a criminal for violating a regulation they have no reason to know exists. Section 2 is policy of the United States that criminal enforcement of criminal regulatory offenses is disfavored. Prosecution of criminal regulatory offenses is most appropriate for persons who know or can be presumed to know what is prohibited or required by the regulation and willfully choose not to comply, thereby causing or risking substantial public harm. This is a very interesting EO, because he's basically implying if you're more advanced and probably know about the statute, we're not going to let you disregard it. We're going to hold you, as opposed to the more common lay person. We're gonna afford you an opportunity to say who the hell knew about this law. Prosecutions of criminal regularity offenses should focus on matters where a putative defendant is alleged to have known his conduct was unlawful. Strict liability offenses are generally disfavored. And citing Supreme Court precedents on that, where enforcement is appropriate, agencies should consider civil rather than criminal enforcement of strict liability regulatory offenses. Or, meaning that if there's no mens rea, if it's just you do the act, you get punished, instead of throwing people in prison, that you should really be focusing on hitting them with a hefty fee. Or, if appropriate and consistent with due process and the right to jury trial, administrative enforcement. Agencies promulgating regulations potentially subject to criminal enforcement should explicitly describe the conduct subject to criminal enforcement, the authorizing statutes, and the mens rea standard applicable to those offenses. Good.
This is just going to lay out what the
Yeah, so we're not going to go through the rest of that. And by and large, I'll tell you right now, I happen to be a fan of this. I think this is a good thing. I think it could end up being twisted. I'm not going to disregard that potential. It could end up being twisted by people where they say, well, you're someone who's considered advanced in the law because you have a lawyer on your staff, even if it's a lawyer, the lawyer's never seen it. It could be weaponized, but I think it makes it more difficult to weaponize. So that's a good thing in general. Good job, President Trump. We want to get to Tulsi? Should we do that? Is that where we're going
Tulsi.
next?
Yep.
All right.
First, I got a video of the Real America Voice people talking about it, and then we'll go to.
Jim and I are in sync. In sync. Good job. All right. Good job. Let's go. Just the news, no noise. Here we go.
To have you, sir. I think that for a lot of Americans, this is shocking. Unfortunately, not surprising. They made us feel like fools for saying that this reflected something similar to Lois Lerner's IRS scandal going after conservatives, when in fact it was not.
Well, you're right. It's not surprising. You're right. It is shocking. And again, elections have consequences. And in this case, it's a very good consequence that now this is coming to light. And I appreciate Tulsi Gabbard looking up exactly what happened and releasing this information. It's important the American public understand.
I think we need to start with what Tulsi said.
Oh,
because
okay.
Otherwise, we're just sort of I don't know what the heck they're talking about at this point. I know that's Senator Ron Johnson, but let's start there and get that like a little bigger. Disguised as an attempt to curb domestic terrorism, Biden's plan actually functioned as a partisan playbook for how the Biden administration would weaponize government and intelligence agencies against everyday Americans whose offense was supporting President Trump or daring to disagree with or oppose their policies. This is explaining, by the way, she's explaining the YouTube algorithm that I've been dealing with. That's what I'm assuming the YouTube algorithm is part of the Biden administration's nefarious activities against me personally for calling out their abuses regularly. This abuse of power that violates our God-given freedoms and civil liberties must end. Must end. What does the Just the News link there do? I
have the article of this. Yes, the video is part of it. So
cool.
Watch video and then you can read the article.
Right. Okay. Fine.
Understands what government does to it, how it tramples on our constitutional rights. From my standpoint, I'm not a fan of government. I don't think our founders were fans of government. They realized that we're men and women. We're not perfect. If you don't want to live in anarchy and chaos, you need some form of government. But government ought to be limited. It ought to be restrained by the enumerated powers of the Constitution. Unfortunately, our government has busted out of those constraints long ago, spends way too much money, over $7,000 billion a year this year. I knew we were in trouble when we stopped talking about billions and went to
7,000 billion, so 7 trillion.
That's definitely not true.
Yeah.
What's 7 trillion?
What the government spends.
We're not spending 7 trillion.
Yes, we have been. That's the thing. We've been borrowing 2 trillion a year on top of the 5 trillion basically that we take in taxes.
Oh, that 7,000. That's just not English, though. I understand.
It's not proper English, but that's mathematically correct.
People can, maybe he feels like people cannot properly assess what a trillion is. Did you hear my explanation as to how you can get a better mental grip? Because when we're talking about numbers that end in illions, it's very difficult to distinguish between million, billion, trillion, and understand the grave significance that we're talking about when you go up. Which, if you're unfamiliar with how there
was a video somewhere that showed like stacks of money, and it said this is a million, this is of $100 bills, this is a million, this is a billion, this is a trillion, and it's obscenely.
The best explanation I heard, which I've employed several times on this channel, I'll probably do many times more in the future. Those of you who are new and haven't heard it yet, you need to conceptualize these large numbers. Here's the best way to conceptualize it. Imagine that someone is giving you $1 every second. Do you know how long it would take you to get $1 million? And I'm not going to test you. And how long is a million seconds? 11 days. $1 per second, $60 a minute, $3,600 an hour. You end up getting in 11 days, you get $1 million. Do you know how long it would take you to get to $1 billion? 30 years. The difference between $1 billion and $1 million is 30 years versus 11 days. That is astonishing when you consider, all of us have been alive a lot longer than 1 million seconds, and plenty of people watching right now have not been alive 1 billion seconds. That's right. 1 billion seconds ago, it was 1995. That's 1 billion seconds. A trillion, to get to a trillion, is 30,000 years.
Mhm.
like long before Adam, 30 a trillion. That's what 1 trillion is. We're talking 4, 5, 7 trillion being spent. That's a trillion is 30,000 years ago versus 1 million being 11 days ago. That gives you some sort of comprehension as to how vast these numbers are. And I think it's a much better way for us to appreciate the significance. So when he says 7,000 billion seconds, I understand he figures most people cannot really properly conceptualize a trillion. But if they think about it in how many, in $1 per second, it becomes a lot easier to sort of grasp that. But yeah.
A trillion, so this doesn't seem like 4.4 to 7 trillion. That's just a few $1 trillion, and those are thousands of billions of dollars. Nobody is in control. This thing is completely out of control, and unfortunately, when you have a radical left president, a lot of people are pretty sympathetic with a radical left president inside government, and they do his bidding, and that's exactly what we saw in these agencies going after President Biden's, the left's political opponents, and trampling on our constitutional rights.
Glad to have you, sir.
All right. So, in what way does she spell out exactly what the method was? Because that's what I'm really curious. Can you make that like a little bigger so that,
big enough or bigger?
Why don't you give me the link? Give me the link, and I'll.
Okay.
I think you did give me. I think you did give me the link. Yeah, I think I got it here.
I can put it in a private chat real quick.
Yeah, do that. That'll be faster. Maybe hit me in the private chat, because I think I'll just be able to pull this up. We'll come back over here. Remove that. No, we'll just. I think it'll just be better that way. All right. There you go. Look at that. DNI Tulsi Gabbard says Biden-era domestic terrorism policy must end, calls an abuse of power. This was late last night. Tulsi Gabbard says the Biden-era mentality of treating conservative citizens with dissenting views like domestic terrorists was an abuse of power, signaling that a 2021 memo that empowered the FBI to probe Americans for, quote, concerning non-criminal behavior is no longer operative. Oh, thank God for that. Gabbard told Just the News in a statement Monday that she had ended the domestic terrorism approach of the Biden administration that was used to justify the targeting of conservative Catholics, gun enthusiasts, and parents who protested school board policies. You remember that when the FBI was investigating these folks who went down, had the audacity to go down to a school board and complain about books called I don't know, Timmy gives oral to his teacher or something sick like that. So in fact, officials said domestic terrorism was recently removed as a top threat from the intelligence community's national threat assessment as a first step in the transition. Gabbard's statement came after Just News report last week that a June 2021 domestic terrorism policy memo empowered federal agencies like the FBI, Homeland Security, to open probes on Americans solely if an agent believed that they had been involved in concerning non-criminal behavior. I wonder I genuinely wonder if there's a file on me. I'm reading this and I'm like, I really wonder if there's a file on me. I can read the memo here. How long is this memo? I feel it's long.
It's shocking because that would seem to me to be a blatant violation of the 4th and 5th Amendments. But
yeah, you would think so. The policy, which was shielded from Americans' view because the document was mostly classified during Biden years, substantially lowered the decades-long standard that agents opening a probe must have a predicate based on a reasonable factual basis that a crime has been committed. Like, let's go after criminals. People have done crimes. This is what makes it weaponization. So in order to clarify what she's saying here is they don't know or have a reason to believe you committed a crime. Quite the contrary. This memo is to say they haven't committed a crime. Let's see if we can find crimes on these people who are expressing opinions we don't like. This is what you call tyranny, because especially when we read it in context of this executive order that was just passed last week, where it's like there's hundreds of thousands of statutes no one knows anything about that have strict liability, and here you have Biden telling his agents, go get these people who we don't like. This is low level tyranny. I don't like using the word tyranny or fascism, but I'm saying is this is so much closer to tyranny than if you put the aggregate of every quote unquote tyrannical thing Trump ever did and put them in one big cumulative box. It was not close to this right here, this one thing right here, where it's like we're going to just ignore Fourth and Fifth Amendment, ignore standard protocols, and try and see how we can make criminals out of people who we have no reason to believe are engaging in criminal conduct. What do you got?
It's almost like when Trump was saying that they're actually after us, and he's just in their way. Yep. He was actually telling the truth, and look 100%. What they did to him. It's basically Baria was his name, right? Or Baria. Yeah. Show me the man, I'll find you the crime.
Yeah. I think it's Beria. No? Yeah. I think it's Beria. Well, he's referencing over here the head of the KGB under Stalin. So the policy, which was shielded from Americans' view because the document was mostly classified. Right. So what do we got here? FBI and DHS were allowed by Biden to open a probe based on a mere concern and without the behavior having to be criminal in nature. After Gabbard declassified the memo this spring, legal experts and members of the Congress raised serious concerns about the change, warning it threatened Americans' rights and civil liberties. Gabbard signaled in her statement to Just the News that she shared those concerns. Quote, disguised as an attempt to curb domestic terrorism, and this is why I said when he gave that what I call the red speech in front of Independence Hall with the red lights behind him, where he looked like Satan himself, calling out how Ultra MAGA is the biggest threat to America today. Biden's plan actually functioned as a partisan playbook on how the Biden administration would weaponize government intelligence against everyday Americans whose, quote, offense was supporting Trump or daring to disagree with or oppose their policies, the Trump administration top intelligence official said. Quote, to ensure transparency and accountability, I declassify and release the documents so Americans can see the truth about the Biden administration's weaponization and politicization of our government against Americans. This abuse of power that violates our God-given freedoms and civil liberties must end, Gabbard added. 100% correct. I'm glad she declassified it. I'm glad she shared it with us, because we need to be aware. The more transparency we have, the only way we're going to start getting to where we are ideally hoping to get under this current administration is if the rot and corruption and abuses of power are brought into the light. I don't want the Trump administration to mirror the fascistic tendencies of the Biden administration in order to get back at the other side. I want this stuff called to light. I want the government to be exposed and embarrassed and directions given as to how that's changing. That's what we want from Pam Bondi. If you're not going to give us the JFK files in full and in total, just tell us. Tell us why. Tell us it's shredded. Tell us whatever. Just tell us. Give it to us straight. Treat us like we're adults. Because go ahead. You can jump in here.
I would like to see the people who, any of the FBI agents or any of the people who did stuff and went after people using this that violated people's constitutional rights, they need to be punished.
Well, see, here's the question. At what level? Meaning, let's imagine you're an FBI agent, okay? And they
all take an oath, Joe, to uphold the Constitution.
Right. Okay. But if they're not actually engaging in search and seizure, right? They're not violating the Constitution, but they're going down this road of searching instead of trying to search for criminals, search to solve crimes, but to find crimes that no one has heard of, and show me the man, and now I'll show you the crime. That is technically not violating the Constitution. This is why I think we'll struggle to get convictions for people who follow this in the first place. Even I think that as far as a policy, it's evil. It's an evil abuse of the authority that they were entrusted with. But technically, just because we have decade-long policy that you're not going to start investigating people unless they have known criminal conduct, that doesn't mean that you can I'll give you an example, okay? On a civil level, right? Let's assume you decide, I'm going to have a private investigator follow this person around and dig up whatever they can on this person who I don't like. That's not a crime. But now, instead of it being a private investigator, it's an FBI agent under the direction of the Biden administration. That's essentially what we have here. It's not technically a crime unless they use access that they're not supposed to. They use methodology that they're not supposed to be employing.
We know that they illegally spy on us all the time.
That's a different thing.
So,
that could theoretically be a violation of constitutional rights. But assuming that the FBI was operating as private investigators, and their target were folks who were aligned with Trump, it's not technically a crime. It's just reflective of the utter corruption of the Biden administration. See what I'm saying?
I mean, they put her on the terror watch list. Tulsi Gabbard, the Biden administration.
Yep. Not surprised. Not surprised. All right. My brother, this was great. I really appreciate you stepping in here and help me out, catch up on some of the news of the day, because this is what I have
some good ones lined up for tomorrow.
Awesome, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. All right, same bad time, maybe a little earlier. We'll see.
Okay.
All right, that
Thanks,
is the politics and news. God bless. Please make sure you sign up to Jim's. Jim tells you. Give me that link. Give me that link.
Okay, I'll put it in the private chat.
We got to get him over 1,000. We have to get him there. This guy's awesome. All right. Let me copy this. I'm going to put this in the, I'm going to actually pin it. That's what we're doing. We're going to pin it. All right. Please sub up to Jim here. You can pop over there for a second and pop on back. And there you go. Now, let me just pin that. And then we can move on to the depravity of Diddy, which was on full display today. All right. God bless you, brother. I will see you, God willing, tomorrow.
I'll be in the
Take
chat.
care, my friend.
All right.
Godspeed. And that was Jim. Jim was great. He was a find. Jim was a find. Let me I'm putting in the description too. Jim tells. All right. I'm even going to put it in Rumble just because. You guys in Rumble, if you can click the link and just click up, follow him, just give him a help so you can get past that hurdle and start getting monetized. Once you get to 500, you can get super chats, but you don't get advertisers. You only get that once you hit 1,000. So if we can get him up over 1,000, then we can help him actually get paid for his time without needing to have his own fan base paying him. So God bless you if you can do that. And I'm going to pin that in Rumble as well. So this way people can help him out that way, because I genuinely appreciate him and all the work he does here. So, and his compensation is those subs. So you guys just clicking that link, that's his compensation. That and the privilege of hanging out with me. Whatever that is. Whatever that's worth. The pain or the privilege. Now I need a moment here because I don't know what I did with my notepad. Give me one moment. I'll be right back. Right back. All right. All right. All right. All right. All right. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let me just. How much time am I at here? Controls. Okay. 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 57 minutes. Now, when I got to court today, due to delays that were somewhat beyond my control, they were actually wrapping up the cross-examination of Mr. Daniel Phillip. As you may recall, yesterday, Daniel Phillip was called to the stand. Daniel Phillip is one of the people who got paid for a living by Diddy back in 2012, 2013 for engaging in coitus with Diddy's girlfriend while Diddy would watch. And he was being crossed by Donaldson last night, yesterday, as we wrapped up the day. Donaldson finished up his cross. I thought Donaldson's cross seemed kind of weak. And as a witness, some witnesses on the stand, they melt on the cross. Others just look stronger and stronger. And the ones who look stronger and stronger are people who have the benefit of having A, confidence, and B, telling the truth. So when they get caught in something, they don't look shifty. And the fact that you try making them look shifty and they're able to show you how they're not being shifty, it only ends up building on their credibility rather than harming it. It's almost like if you see someone who is great at cards, and then you actually watch them from like behind the scenes and you can see that they're not cheating, you're that much more appreciative of the skill. And you're like, wow, this person really is that good. So too, if a cross-examination is done poorly, or if the witness has both confidence and integrity, it only ends up generally helping the credibility factor where you're like, wow, this guy really did, he was telling us the truth. And he seemed to have confidence. He certainly seemed to have that in spades. I got there for the very end of the cross, which I think was the recross, and then there was a redirect. And one of the things, and I spoke to some people who were there and asked them about what came out on cross and how he looked. And everyone I asked, and I asked several people, said that he looked highly credible through the cross. So that's good. That's good. He seemed very credible when he was explaining everything there. What I caught was the very end of the recross where he was asked by Donaldson that you sent a text message saying you sent it on that the incident that sort of broke apart his involvement with Diddy and Cassie. So understand this. This guy was basically the paid for attraction at several of Diddy's, we'll call them freak offs, several of these freak offs. And then one day he perceived a violent incident of Diddy attacking Cassie. And he had grown fond of Cassie. He actually said on cross today, I was told that he admitted on cross that if he could, he would have dated Cassie. He liked her a lot. And that he had concerns for her well-being by staying with Diddy. So he basically, had a sour taste with respect to Diddy. And that happened in in July of 2012. On July 30th, 2012 is when that happened. But then on October 15th, he sent a text message to Cassie saying, quote, "I love y'all, N-word," with not the hard R. Now, Xavier Donaldson might be able to say that in court and be able to get away with it. I don't need to be clipped. But basically, just those 4 words, "I love you all, N-word." And Donaldson, he said, "You sent that 4 afterwards. And when you said you all, that referenced both Cassie and Diddy, didn't it?" Yes. And that was 3 months after the alleged attack by my client on Cassie, wasn't it? Yes, but no further questions. So Maureen Comey pops up and she said, "One last recross question, Your Honor." He said, "Fine, just one last." And he said, "Why?" She said, "Why did you send that text?" And he said, "I sent it as bait to Cassie because she wasn't responding to any of my texts. So I thought that if she thinks that I'm cool with everything that happened, she might respond. And that way I'd be able to check up on her to ensure that she's actually okay." There you go. Nothing further. So all this, the sting that comes from like, oh, you see, you were making up that you were so bothered by it because you're saying "I love you all," including Diddy. He's like, no, that wasn't because I actually love Diddy. I was trying to trick Cassie into thinking that I was cool with Diddy because I was hoping I could check up on her and she was not responding to anything I was saying. So there you go. That was the end of that. Then they had a lengthy sidebar, which ended up leading into a break because they had all sorts of confusion. And the sidebar, what ended up coming out of the sidebar was that there's this issue with respect to an alleged assault that happens in 2018, where the defense is now anticipating that Cassie Ventura, they knew was going to be the next person to be called up to the stand. And the defense was saying, we don't want her husband watching his testimony because we think that we are going to need to call him as a rebuttal witness to impeach Cassie's testimony, specifically her testimony about an alleged physical attack of a sexual nature against her will that happened in 2018. So with respect to that particular incident, we are thinking we may need to call him as a rebuttal witness. The government said, and we don't want him here in the room. Government said he's part of her support team. She needs him there as a support. They said, we don't care. We don't want him being there when we don't want him hearing what she says and then conforming his testimony to align with hers. So he can't be here. So they're like, well, you never put him on your witness lists. And they said, the defense said, that's true because we don't have to put people on a witness list if we're going to call them for purposes of impeachment. And since this is someone we're not planning on calling unless it's to rebut certain things we think she may say. So we don't want him in the room, at least for that part. And the judge agreed with the defense. And I think it's the right call. He said under Federal Rule 60, if someone's anticipating that if the other side is anticipating they're going to call someone as a witness, they can't be there for the testimony. But the defense actually showed some kindness to the government, and really less to the government than it is to Cassie herself, where they said, we only want him out of the room when she's talking about that particular incident in the summer of 2018. That's what we want. That's when we want him out of the room. The other stuff that she's talking about, he can be here for. And so it was ordered by the judge. He said, when you get up to asking about that part in the testimony, I'm going to ask that you call for a sidebar, and you'll tell us this is the part we're going into now. And at that point, we will send her husband, which his name is Alex Fine, we'll send Mr. Fine out of the room for that portion of the testimony. And that was the ruling from the judge after like 25 minutes of going back and forth on that. But it was an interesting call. And I think the defense did a good job. And I think they were gentlemanly in saying, look, we understand this is a difficult testimony for her to talk about. And we'll respect that. And we'll try to let her have her support staff. But we need what we need, that he's not going to be there for that particular section. Now, it could be that that's the part she needs him most. Like psychologically and emotionally, that's probably one of the more difficult parts of her testimony, in a testimony that's filled with incredibly difficult moments. And yeah, so Cassie shows up and she's pregnant, visibly pregnant. And she gets sworn in. Cassandra Ventura. Now, couple of things I want to give you about this. The direct examination was conducted by Emily Johnson from the government. Emily Johnson is not nearly the skilled litigator that Maureen Comey is. This became evident throughout the course of the day, and it's somewhat frustrating. And if you saw a short that I dropped earlier today, I dropped this morning, you can love or hate Maureen Comey. And if you hate Maureen Comey because you figure she's Jim Comey's daughter, which she is, and that she's corrupt and looking to protect the elites, which she does and is and does, and acts like Jim Comey's daughter in that respect. So in that respect, I happen to not particularly care for her as a human being, who I think is an enemy of the state in certain levels. That being said, what I told people in locals last night is this woman is one of the best litigators I've ever seen. And what she does is she crafts a narrative. It's like she's a storyteller, which is very tricky to do on direct. On cross-examination, it's easy to shine. It's easy to shine because you are supposed to make yourself the star of the show. I'm teaching you about how litigation works in general. So when you're cross-examining, I don't need these headphones on, right? When you're cross-examining, you want the jury's focus to be on you. You want the jury to basically look at you as you're the star of the show, and this person who you're cross-examining is your prop to try and expose all the problems with what they had just heard on direct testimony. So it's very easy for those of us who go into litigation, and many people who become litigators do it because they have a natural tendency to be a ham. So it's a very natural position that if you develop your skills as a litigator, that one of the easier skills for us to master for a large percentage of litigators is looking good on cross, because that's what your natural inclination was that likely brought you into law and becoming a litigator in the first place. Direct examination is just the opposite. In direct examination, the objective is you want to make yourself small in the specter that the jury is encompassing, is appreciating, and you want their focus to be on the storyteller who's the witness. And your job in that capacity is you want to set them up that they're going to help deliver a compelling narrative. And I've watched enough of Maureen Comey between the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, where she was exceptional there, and the direct that she did with Daniel Phillip, the escort, who was the second witness in this case, to tell you that one of the ways she excels is that she knows how to make a story pop right out of the gate. Right out of the gate. Where a jury that might be sleeping or not recognize the significance of a particular witness who's sitting down before them. Most people, when they call up a witness, they wade into the water. They wade into the pool. And they'll basically be like, so state your name, what's your date of birth? What do you do for a living? How long have you been doing that? Where were you educated? Tell us your background over here. How many kids do you have? The jury is basically falling asleep. And then they're like, and tell us when you came to this position here, and tell us what happened on leading up to that day. And then suddenly there'll be like a nugget that you're like, oh, that was important. I guess that's what we're supposed to get out of this. And that's the way most litigators do direct. That's not like a failing, and that's how you're taught to do direct. But someone trained Maureen Comey in a way that is exceptional, in that she asked that guy this question. She's like, please state your name for the record. Daniel Phillip. How old are you? 41. How are you making money in 2012, 2013? Which that's a weird question to go to specifically to that time. He's like, oh, I was a manager of this all-male review club. Oh, how else did you get? How else were you making money? So, oh, Diddy was paying me to engage. And he just like threw out like explicitly his girlfriend. The entire room just like, whoa. We're 4 questions in, and everyone's like, I need to hear this guy's story. I want to know who he is. I want to know what's happening here. All of a sudden now, we're 4 questions in, and it's like, how was I making money in 2012, 2013? Yeah, I was getting paid thousands of times every time I went out and basically performed with Diddy's girlfriend in front of Diddy. And what I'm saying is that's storytelling, because the rest of the time you cannot stop fixating on how this entire thing unfolds. That's an appreciation for what grips an audience that she has. And now the entire time she set up, this is why I'm so appreciative of it. She set up that we all have our attention focused on this witness. That is a skill. I'm sharing this with you because I think that it's a nice thing for you to better appreciate the art to litigating, and that it is an art. It's not a science. And the same, and that the ability to get it done well is something that if you notice it, you can so better appreciate it. And I feel like people who watch me on this channel have a sufficient interest in law that if I can walk you through it, you have a better appreciation for why when I'm looking at something, I'm like, this person's really good at what they do. And other people, I'm like, you're not so good. You're not so good. And you can better appreciate when I tell you that Emily Johnson, who did the direct examination of Cassie Ventura, she's not so good. She's not. And what's very frustrating is that Cassie Ventura is one of the 2 key witnesses in this case. She's one of the 2 people who were allegedly trafficked by Diddy. And she's someone who I found out in the afternoon session is expected to be on the stand for 4 days. 4 days. 4 days. 4 days of Emily Johnson asking questions of one of the 2 most significant and arguably the most significant witness in this trial. 4 days. Now, she's not a terrible lawyer, Emily Johnson. I don't want to besmirch her. She's not a terrible lawyer. But it gets very long and very repetitive and the same questions. And she's nice and she's polite. And sometimes she'll go a little bit out of order, which is another thing that Comey does really well. It's the story has pacing and structure. And when she's done with it, she'll flesh out one area. And when she's done with it, she moves on to the next. And the next one seems logically connected to the last one. And she's never going back to that earlier one. Not so with Emily Johnson. She'll go into an area and then she'll come back to it 20 minutes later and ask, let me ask about this question. What do you mean you didn't ask? Sometimes she's asking questions and the witness doesn't seem to understand what she's getting at. That's part of prep work. That there's a dance here. I'm going to be asking you these questions. And I'm expecting you to tell the truth and give answers along these lines. And that will help set up my next questions. It's a dance that's coordinated and orchestrated between attorney and client, attorney and witness. In this case, not client, but attorney and witness. Now this story here should be the most interesting story in the trial. This is what the whole trial is about. Was she trafficked? Was she not trafficked? This is it. If she's trafficked, then boom. She's got a horrible story, a horrible tale of abuse. Horrible, awful, terrible. And I'm going to tell you that when she got on the stand there, certainly in the morning session, the overall vibe was, first and foremost, that Emily was not really ready for the moment. And secondly, that she had just met Cassie 10 minutes earlier. Because some of the questions, she's like, I don't understand your question. I'm like, how can you have a direct examination with your featured witness and she doesn't understand your question? This should be a question she's heard 12 times by now. If not 12, at least 3 or 4. I don't understand your question. Did you two just meet? Was one of you unavailable to talk to the other at all times ever in human history? How is it that you don't understand your own the assistant district attorney's question here? How is that possible? That's not a reflection on Cassie at all. It's 100% a reflection on the attorney, because the attorney should make sure that whatever questions that she's going to pose, that Cassie understands that, and she should have a general idea as to what the answer to that question will be, and how that will help, and how that answer will help formulate the next question. Now, you don't want it to be something that's scripted. That's terrible. If it's scripted, you don't want to do that. Definitely want the witness to be telling their story over in their own words and not something that sounds like they said it 14 times before. But certainly that, do you understand this question that I'm going to be asking you? Yes. If you don't understand, tell me, and I'll, if I ask you this question, what would you say in that scenario? Okay. And that's it. And then you move on. If I asked you this question, what would you say in that scenario? That's not what happened today. That's not what happened today. And it seemed, when I'm listening to some of the answers that Cassie was giving, in the morning more so than the afternoon, she seemed incredibly conflicted in ways that could destroy the state's case, utterly destroy the state's case. That I'm sure the defense was writing furiously and quoting her and planning on quoting her back to herself when they finally get up for cross-examination, either tomorrow or the next day. And she will be on cross for a very long time. This is going to be a full day of cross-examination, and I am worried for this poor woman. I am worried that they're going to hang her and ruin this case on her own words, because there's so many things that she said that the defense was salivating, excited, because she expresses so much love for Diddy. Now, you have to tell the truth. And she clearly was very much in love with Diddy. Very, very much. But we'll go through some of these answers. I just wanted you to understand the overarching perceptions that I got from today's testimony. So this way you can better appreciate what I'm giving to you. And those who can't stay the entire time. Now, I will tell you this. In the afternoon session, Cassie was much better. Emily wasn't. Emily Johnson was not. She was still excessively repetitive. And when you're repetitive, you put the jury to sleep so that they're just zoned out. And if the jury is sleeping, how is that helping you win your case? It's not possible. They're not hearing testimony you need them to hear. And when you're asking the same questions over and over and over again, it's just like, oh my God, we get it. He's a monster. He's terrible. We get it. He's controlling. We get it. We get it. We understand. But it's not working. Bieber's not going to testify. I don't think he's on the witness list. He's not going to testify. This whole thing is that he trafficked Cassie and he trafficked Jane. And part of that trafficking was that he imported a couple of professionals across state lines for the purposes of putting on a show for himself. Anyway, with all that now, let's get on into it. The beating caught on tape came up somewhat, yes. The beating caught on tape. Yeah, Johnson likes to weave her story, but that's exactly what you're not supposed to be doing when you're an attorney handling a direct. She does like to weave. That's just bad lawyering, though. It's just bad lawyering. All right. I'm trying to run through this. She's 38, musician, entertainer, in a relationship for over 10 years with Diddy. There were breaks, there were good times, there were bad, there were arguments. If violent would result, sometimes there would be physical abuse. What type of physical abuse? Mashing the head. He would drag me, he would kick me, he would stomp my head. By the way, they referred to him as Sean throughout, which I had questions whether that's tactically the way you want to do this, to humanize him like that. But I guess they figure his actions are monstrous enough that they speak for themselves. Testimony sounds like she was into it, but young and dumb. Cross will be fun. Hard to cross pregnant women. Well, they have a woman doing it. It's going to be Tenny Garagos who's going to be doing it. Which you almost have to have a woman do it. The injuries she would sustain includes knots on her forehead, bruises, and broken lip. Okay, so that's the injury she sustained from Sean. Then they showed a vid from the Intercontinental leaving. She said that we saw a vid of you leave. Not they didn't show the vid at this point of you leaving Intercontinental. Was that when you were leaving a freak off? Yes. In the first year, Diddy proposed voyeurism. The first year of their relationship, he proposed voyeurism, watching me, and yeah, and she was asked this question. This is classic Emily. Okay, how did the term freak off originate? I don't remember. See, this is where I put like a little. See, a little note to myself here. That's the note. See a note? A little star and a question mark there? I don't remember. What do you mean you don't remember? Did you not know this question was coming? And if you gave that answer to her when Emily was prepping you for this, and she knows you don't remember, why are you asking the question? It was just, we were like 10 minutes into this thing, and I'm like, there's no prep. Or there's very poor prep. I don't remember. Then why is the district attorney asking you this question? Why are you being asked the question? It's not something we need to know. If you're trying to flesh out the thing, if there's some point to it, okay. Or the term freak off started. If she didn't know that what answer she's going to give, this is a question I have for you, Miss Johnson. Okay. Clearly, she never knew how it came about. Did you ever ask that question before? And if you didn't, were you not a little scared that maybe she would have said, "Oh yeah, we call it freak off because I'm kind of a freak, and that's me getting off. So we call it freak off." How's that? What does that do for your case there, Emily? What's happening? What's happening? You're assistant district attorney, and I want to be clear, Maureen Comey is not the only talented one there. In the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, everyone I saw, everyone from the ADAs, they were rock solid. I was getting so bothered by Emily Johnson's work today. Really bothered. Really bothered. Terrible. Derek, God bless you. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. And I know I'm being nitpicky, and I know that no one in the jury, the chance that anyone in the jury noticed this are very small. But it's reflective of the fact that the work that's being done here, there's something wrong. There's just something wrong. I was like, I don't understand what's happening here. In the Southern District of New York, this is like the most active jurisdiction in the world. I don't know what's happening. So explain to us what happens in a freak off. Well, we hire an escort, and basically it's an experience where I perform for Sean. And Sean will be watching me and the other performer. And Sean set it up in the beginning. In the beginning, when we have it, he would set them up, and later I would. We're already like all the way into talking about freak offs, and then we're going to come back and start talking about the formation of the relationship before they were freak offs. This is what I'm talking about as far as poor structure. I know I'm being nitpicky, but this is why you send me in there. Okay, you send me in there to be nitpicky. All right. So tell us about the first time. Well, I was 22. I was nervous. Had a sense of responsibility to do it for him because he clearly was very into the idea of having voyeurism. So a sense of responsibility. But I didn't understand exactly what he got off on it. Like I didn't understand why this was something that he would enjoy. What about this are you enjoying? The idea that you're watching me with. She just couldn't comprehend it. And she apparently was very naive and knew very little about physical intimacy whatsoever when she was 22, when she met him. She describes herself as never having like a real relationship. And Tian Schlickman said that. That's correct. Never ask a question you don't know the answer to. But she wanted to do it for him. It was something that he wanted me to do, and I was in love. So she's already talking about how much she's in love with him, which I don't really love that, but that's just the reality you got to deal with. You got to deal with what the situation is. And she also said, I didn't know what no was, and I was afraid it would make him angry. Do you know how many times that question, I was afraid to make him angry, that statement she would make, and she would say, well, why were you afraid of that? Why are you afraid of making him angry? This is a question Emily Johnson must have asked Cassie 5 times today, at different times in the whole thing. This is not helpful. We know that she can't really explain why it is that she was afraid of making him angry. She was hoping that Cassie would say, because if I made him angry, he would punch me in the face. But she wasn't giving that answer. She wasn't. And this is part of the problem that the state was having, which was becoming very evident this morning. That part, when she was saying she was afraid of making him angry means he's leaving. Making him angry means he might kick me to the curb. So I'm basically doing things so he won't kick me to the curb. And the problem is that if that is really what her motivation is for everything she does here, that if I make him angry, he's going to kick me to the curb, then she is making a choice and saying, I would rather go through this awful nightmarish hell than have that guy kick me to the curb. So I will keep going through this nightmarish hell, and that's a choice I am making, because I'd rather that than him kicking me to the curb or him not showing me love. This is exactly what we should anticipate the state will be saying in their closing arguments 10 weeks from now. They will be saying that the reason he wasn't compelling them, they made a choice. You want to know how I know they're going to say this? Because they brought it up in their opening statement, that these are strong women. These are independent women. They made decisions for themselves. Now, you can say that they were not capable. They were not. This woman doesn't seem like she was at all strong when she was 22. Quite the contrary. Very weak woman. Maybe she's stronger now, but when she was 22, she was not a strong woman. She was the furthest thing from a strong woman. She was very naive about physical intimacy. She was very naive business-wise. She was clearly star-flustered, saying she was a fan of his from the time she was a kid. He's 17 years older than her. These are all things that came out during the course that were elicited today. And at first she didn't even understand, and we're going to get to this soon, she didn't understand how the music industry works, which apparently her current perception of how the music industry works is that she needs to provide some sort of physical satisfaction to have anything go her way in the music industry. She's like, back then I didn't know how it worked, but he showed me. This is not a strong, independent woman making decisions. And yes, she wrote hundreds of songs that were never recorded. We'll get to that. She was arranging her own freak offs. That will be hit hard and cross hard. Oh, it will. It will. That came up today. There is a response. There is a response to this. I'm going to tell you this. I don't think the case was sunk today. I think the testimony she gave this afternoon was a lot more beneficial than what we're going to read about during the first part of her testimony. First part of her testimony, she seems very conflicted, almost like she's still in love with him. Even though she remarried, she got married. She's raising a family of her own. To some degree, she still certainly looks back on the early halcyon days of her relationship as perhaps the happiest moments of her life. That's the vibe I was taking, and that everything she was doing was trying to recapture that. If I keep him happy, I can go back to having that, and maybe become Mrs. Sean Combs. Thank you so much for your support, Pam. You're awesome. She didn't seem today to be money grubbing. We haven't talked yet about the $30 million settlement she got from him. She didn't seem nowhere, and she seemed to be coming across as genuine in the sense that she was saying things that are not good for her case. And when she's talking about the greatness of being with Sean Combs in the early days of a relationship, none of it is the fancy cars, none of it is the fancy hotels. It's all about him individually, that she had genuine feelings for him individually, irrespective. Part of it is the fact that he's famous, that I'm where every woman would want to be. All these women want his attention, and instead I have it. And that builds into her jealousy when she feels like she doesn't have it. But that's more a matter of having him, the charismatic individual, than it is the actual money. Now, yes, in case you're unfamiliar with the circumstance, from what I learned today that I was unfamiliar with until I got to court today, she did get a settlement of or she got an award of $30 million from him. So she's gotten paid. And I was young and dumb is not a great response, but it is more convictable. It's much more convictable. Because it's much more he's controlling her. She had all expenses paid, her multiple houses. Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. She also had no career. She had a hit song when she met him, and he basically stripped her of all her money and her earning potential. He buried her career. Now, I don't know if she had any talent or not. Supposedly, they say she had a hit song when she was young. I don't. Well, I should look that up. What is the name of her song? Cassie Ventura. Now I'm curious. Cassie Ventura song. Long Way to Go from 2006. Is that it? I don't know. It hit number 97 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 chart. It reached number 12 on the UK singles chart. So there you go. It was back in 2006. So that's a lot better than you or me have ever done, right? I mean, you can sit there knocking like, oh, 97. It's for a first song, to make a hit like that, and she was 20 years old doing that on her own, that's not too bad. And that's true. One hit wonders happen all the time. I'm not saying that she's got a wealth of talent. I don't know anything about her musical abilities. I had to look up what song she was supposedly famous for. You saw that. I'm simply saying once she met him, she wasn't going to have any career. I mean, come on. That certainly seems that way. Anyway. She said Sean can control my life, and by that she meant her career, how she would dress, and she was young and naive, and what happened if you said no. So she said there were blackmail materials or he would get violent. This is the first good answer she's giving for the state, that I'm under threat of blackmail. I'm under threat of him getting violent with me. So now I don't have a choice. It might look like I have a choice, but I don't, because the last thing I can afford is him getting angry at me. I was afraid he would release them. In the back of my mind, I knew I would somehow be hurt by him. That's a quote from her. In the back of my mind, I knew I would somehow be hurt by him. She said he's very polarizing, and I didn't know what would happen. Now, the phrase "I didn't know what would happen," I actually made a little start of myself. I don't know if that's good or bad. I think that, I said, is that control? I didn't know what would happen. Is that control? I'm like, maybe. Sometimes the threat of not knowing what hazards can come to you, I think that could be deemed control. And one of the things I want you to ponder is, if you're watching this now, you could drop a comment now or in the chat. I want you to ponder this, because this is something that I think the jury is ultimately going to be grappling about, and what this whole case may boil down to. This question I'm about to ask you right now. If she has mixed motivations for making choices to degrade herself, and part of her motivation is, I really don't want him to leave. And part of her motivation is, I really don't want him to hurt me, humiliate me, or blackmail me, or physically punch me in the face. So she has a carrot and a stick in this scenario. The carrot is what she's hoping will happen, and that she'll end up being Mrs. Sean Combs. And then there's the stick part. And perhaps we're seeing both here at play. In fact, I'll tell you right now, I think the chances are exceedingly high. I would say it's almost beyond reasonable doubt. I mean, we have to get cross that it's mixed. Is he criminally liable? Does the introduction of controlling factors now make him someone who's coercing her? Or is it not? And you might say it depends on which of those factors is most important, is most significant. And that might be a fair way to look at it. But then the other element that we need to consider is this. In order for him to be guilty of this felony, there has to be mens rea, which is a fancy Latin term for intent. He has to intend to be controlling her. And if he, I guess, a reasonable person would say, look, she's doing this because she loves me, not because she's afraid of me, not because she thinks I'm going to be violent. She's doing this to make me happy because I'm her boyfriend. And if that's what he thinks, if that's what he truly thinks, then even if that's not what she's thinking, and she really is acting out of fear of him, is he guilty? He doesn't have an intent to control her. He's looking at it as if this is just a relationship. Men and women will argue in a relationship all the time, and one will give in to the other. Clearly, this happens dozens of times in virtually every relationship across the globe. So just because I tend to win a lot of these arguments, does that mean that now I'm committing a crime? I'm coercing her? Or is she making a choice? And if he doesn't have a reasonable basis, at least, to know that she's being motivated out of fear by him, even if she is, perhaps there's insufficient mens rea for him to be held criminally liable. Like, oh my God. Imagine he could legitimately say, I had no idea that she was afraid that I would blackmail her, that I would release her videos. I had no idea at all. Is he trying to control her? He's like, come on, I know you want to do it. Come on, I know you want to do it. And so should that not be a factor? And I know that some of you are going to say it really depends on what he's asking her to do. Like, the worse the thing is that he's asking her to do, the more culpable he should be. And I think that psychologically and intuitively, that kind of makes sense. But then if you're really getting into the psychology as to what you're thinking when you're saying that, I think on some level you're saying intuitively and inherently, what you're implying is that when you're asking a woman to put herself in that terrible position, you have to know there has to be some sort of mens rea there. Any reasonable person would have known that this is not something she was okay with, and that she felt controlled. And some of the stuff he had to do was just objectively, thoroughly degrading. That any human that it would be treated the way she was being treated. It was very dehumanizing, the way he treated her. And that's what made today's testimony in the afternoon very painful to listen to, because he dehumanized her. So people might say stuff like Allegan is saying, like she was arranging the stuff herself. It's very hard to conceptualize that this woman, who at 22, didn't know anything about physical intimacy, and a year or two later, she's being utterly humiliated and degraded in ways that she's not being treated like a human being by random folks who she never met before. I think that's argued. I think I can see a reasonable person saying that's not a fair way to look at this. And I'm kind of at a loss here. I haven't made a decision on guilt here, and I don't know that I ever will, because I think that this is in certain ways a moral question. It's a very, very difficult question. I'm saying her future earnings and moves are not based on past earnings. I didn't say that they were. I'm simply saying that whatever chance she had was destroyed by him, because he's like, you're not making any more music. She was young, dumb, in love with him, willing to do anything. Is that control? When does love become control is the question. And that's what I was getting at. My wife wants me to take out trash to make her happy. If I do it when I hate doing it, couples get some freaky stuff to keep each other happy. That's true. That's true. So, and I don't think there's anything unreasonable in the way you're saying that. I don't think it's anything unreasonable in saying, come on, you have to know she doesn't want this. Especially when sometimes she says, I don't want this. And then you end up talking her into it and doing stuff that's really degrading. You're saying she's doing it for the money. Well, let's say she has, I'll throw this back at you, because I think you're sort of almost playing both sides of it and not realizing that you are. Because you're saying she's doing it for the money. Well, now she's got no money. And in part, the reason she has no money is because she can't take any jobs, because Diddy's saying, no, you can't take any jobs. You can't do that. I'm not letting you. I'm not letting you work in music anywhere, because you're under contract with me. Giving her all sorts of busy work, and if she's away for 10 seconds, he's on the phone. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Calling and calling and calling incessantly. So you ask yourself, at what point does she have a life of her own here? And if she can't make any money, and she becomes dependent on his providing for her, and you put her in that situation by stripping her any opportunity to earn and yelling at her that she can't go work for anyone else, now you're saying she's all about wanting the money. It's like, all of us want to survive. So you sort of many would say that's part of the control. You're not enabling her to earn for herself, whatever she would earn. She was a model. She did modeling and singing. So maybe she didn't have much. She didn't do any modeling after she met Diddy either, because she couldn't. And this is a woman who who the escort said he thought was the most beautiful woman he ever saw in his life. So no more modeling. So in the Gulag Archipelago, the prisoners became the guards. It's more than Stockholm. They just must survive at expense of their own soul. Yeah. And then it's like they're saying, I'm going to do it. And they're going to put up a performance, because if you don't put up the performance, you're just going to get punched in the face anyway. You're going to get him angry at you anyway. So you're going to put up a performance. It really becomes very much a he said, who do you believe here? It becomes a he said, she said. And theoretically, a he said, she said, where he's not going to say anything because of his Fifth Amendment rights. All right. Anyway. Then they got into the there were certain broken electronic materials that were given to the government, and they started emitting video and pictures. And now we start going back. We're in the middle of talking about this whole thing here as far as how she's being controlled and her whole life's controlled. All of a sudden, Emily Johnson, let's do a flashback here to when you first met Diddy. Oh, excuse me. Never call him Diddy. Only Sean. So she said she signed a contract with Bad Boy Records, which he owned and controlled, and she thought the defendant was larger than life and a tremendous entrepreneur. And at the time she first met him, she was 19 years old and released an album in 2006. And then there was no more albums after that, or one more album. I'm not sure. There was one album. And they start going through photos from 2006, where she's at the BET Awards, and Kim Porter and her, and Kim Porter is the mother of one of Diddy's kids. I met this woman today, by the way, Misa somebody. All the reporters are making a big deal about Misa. Apparently, she's the mother of one of Diddy's kids. So she was walking into the courtroom. This is by lunchtime or so. She's walking into the courtroom, and she went through security, and I went through security a little after her. She walks with a walker now. And I actually let her go in front of me because we came through two different security things at the same time and whatever. So I said, "Oh, please, after you." She said, "Thank you." I said, Can I ask you one question?" And she said, "Sure." So I said, "How do you think things are going for Diddy so far?" And she said, "I'm not talking about the trial." I said, "I understand. I wish you and everyone well." That was it. So that was the journalist in me coming out to ask a question of Misa, the famous Misa, who I've never heard of before. But everyone there was like, "Oh my gosh, Misa's here." Let me see if I find a picture of Misa for you. Those of you who don't know Misa. She was limping around on a broken foot or something. Misa Hilton, fashion designer and stylist. This must have been yesterday, the day before, because she wasn't dressed like this today. But this is Misa here. That's her with the long blonde dreadlocks. Anyway, where was we? When did she tell Diddy she did not want this? Is there any proof she told him that other than current testimony? We need evidence other than self-serving. Yeah, there are emails and text messages. Back and forth. Look at that. All right. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything over here. Duckfat says Diddy was playing the role of Pimp and John at the same time. Yeah, he was. He was. All right. They went through more pictures and said the first time that he kissed her was in Vegas in the bathroom. And she said, "I was confused. I was young and a new artist. I didn't know the lay of the land." She said she cried and ran off. He's 17 years older than her. And she's looking at it as if this is completely a business relationship between us. And now in the bathroom, he's kissing her. And she didn't understand intention in that way. And at the time, she had a boyfriend. She said she remembers running out and she didn't want to kiss him. And that changed the relationship, where for a while she was much less friendly with him and trying to stay away from him. And then she was trying to record a new album, and Sean was 17 years older and invited her to a hotel, and she felt nervous, and she was excited to talk about music. And they talked about albums and meetings and hotels and lots of other stuff. The defendant introduced her at that time to the next thing you know, the defendant is introducing her to, the word she used was oral. And he's complaining about a lack of reciprocation, lack of reciprocity. And he made me feel crazy for not. And I understand that kind of relationship. And I was in a relationship. And later on, she felt guilty. So she reciprocated at like the next time she saw him. And then she starts making all these different statements, which the Diddy team was salivating over. This is still in the morning, saying, I wanted to be around him. Leaving, I don't know. I never thought about leaving. I was just there. He wanted my career in his hands, and I wanted to spend time with him. All I wanted. I would have given anything to spend more time with Sean. And it felt special. No one else could spend that time with him. These are all statements that I put a big asterisk around, and I'm just like, this is what we're going to be hearing all about on Cross. All this stuff here about how she loves him, wants to spend time with him. Everything she's doing is because she wants to spend time with him. We're going to hear these words read back to us in closing statements 10 weeks from now. When this trial wraps up, these are the words that the defense is going to be reading to us. I just wanted to spend time with him. That's all this is. She's making these choices because she wants to spend time with him. They're definitely going to say that over and over again. She made some terrible choices because she wanted to spend time with him. She talked about how she went to Miami and there was some sort of party, and I have no idea what Emily Johnson was trying to get at with this whole Emily party. Apparently, that was when they started becoming an item, but she started talking about some flyer for the Miami party, and I was listening very intently, and I have no idea what we were supposed to get out of this testimony. And that again is I'm just jabbing at Emily Johnson, being like, "Where are we going here? Where are we going, Emily? Where are we going?" They showed us more pictures, which no one cares about. I don't know why they're showing us all these pictures, but they did, and pictures of them on a boat. And that's the first time that we got coitus, and there's wine and there's drugs. And Sean gives her a blue dolphin ecstasy. And what we're going to learn here is that basically anytime there is physical intimacy that is meant to be enjoyed by two people who are deeply in love with each other, that there are drugs. Always, always, always. Zero exceptions. Zero. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as people being aroused, engaged, anything. There must be drugs. This is not what I don't know if she's ever said that out loud. I simply was taking note of the fact that every time anyone was having a conversation, any conversation that she talked about, any incident, there was always drugs. Drugs before, drugs during, drugs after, drugs. Just the concept of two people being intimate without drugs seems like completely foreign to her experience with Diddy. Which that also, by the way, since she does claim that Diddy introduced her to drugs, I think that may play into the control factor too. Because if you're giving her drugs designed to heighten her excitement, in some way you're taking away her ability to say no. I think that's a fair perspective. He provided the drugs. He tells her when to take drugs. What quantities to take, how often to take them. These are all things he's doing designed to lower her inhibitions. Now, you can say she's taking the drugs. No one told you to take those drugs. You knew when you were taking those drugs what that ultimately is leading to. And that's a fair counter. But maybe you don't know. Maybe you know it's leading to going this down deep. And you don't realize it's actually going to lead you down here. Meaning you sort of have a perspective that, hey, all right, we're over here. If I engage in drugs, I might deprave myself to like this level down over here that would never do off drugs. But the next thing you know, she's down over here. And perhaps the distinction there is something that she doesn't really have control over. And he's putting her in that position. Now you could say, well, if you do it again a second time, now you do know that that's the bar you might sing to. Well, that's a fair counterpoint. But is there no accountability for the first time you put him there? You did that to her? Or when you sunk her down here, and then next time you sing it down here, the next time you sing it down here, and sing it down lower, sing it down lower, sing it down lower every single time, and then be like, well, we're not going to count the last time because you knew about that level already. I get a certain point. So like the overall level is just all the way down here because it was a slippery slope towards more and more depraved and humiliating and degrading acts. And you sort of, you're going to say, well, she's making a choice again. She's making a choice again. Maybe. And you know what? There's no right or wrong in this. This is a very subjective perspective. And he's only being convicted if you get 12 people to agree that what happened here is beyond universally their subjective perspective. And they're going to have to say that in the face of looking at someone who many of them probably idolized a couple of years ago, if not currently idolizing. So if they're saying that, I'm just saying, I can understand verdicts in either direction here. I really can. The question needs to be answered, is Diddy a pimp to Cassie on the grounds for profit with a clientele list? If it's no, acquit. It didn't know. Quite the contrary. He was spending the money. It was costing him thousands of dollars. We're going to learn that he was paying these folks like $6,000 a pop. Although it's technically, there was multiple pops. Anyhow, she said that he gave a blue dolphin ecstasy, pressed the pill. It was a pressed pill called Dolphins, and she felt out of it. And she had once taken it unintentionally, someone else's Gatorade. This is the first time that she's intentionally taking drugs. And all she'd ever had before that was marijuana, and that the effect of the dolphin was it made her feel both euphoric and her skin sensitive. Then we're looking at more pictures of the witness of Cassie and Diddy, and then after Miami, we were then considered hanging out, which I think is kid speak. That's what the kids say for going out. We were now hanging out. In hindsight, I became one of his girlfriends. I thought it was monogamous. It was never in public. And the reason he gave me for not being in public is he's like, well, you have an artist relationship with me. It'll look bad for you if everyone knows you're my girlfriend. And it also was he had his own family there, so it wouldn't look good for him. So they're sort of sneaking around having this type of relationship. And Kim was his public girlfriend, but she really wasn't in the picture. And she had moved away, so she felt like, that we're in a monogamous relationship. It's just no one knows about us. Young and dumb. The guy shop Trump Golf Course got $6 million from Diddy. Really? They managed to work that. Luzon says you can't make these choices when someone drugs you. At that point, they're making the choice for you. Well, you're taking the drugs. That's the response that someone on the Allegan side of things would say. And I can understand concerns of saying that this could be opening a Pandora's box for people who don't take their significant other to this level of depravity, but perhaps a little bit more push their boundaries more than they anticipated, and then all of a sudden you're facing criminal charges because, you were too influential on this person. That's why I think Allegan's coming from here. And I'm telling you, I personally can very much appreciate both sides of this problem. I don't think it's an easy thing for we as a society to come wrap our heads around. That maybe there are scenarios that we should be punishing someone on a criminal level, but that should be exceedingly rare. is probably the healthiest way to look at this, and then ask ourselves whether this is one of those exceedingly rare scenarios. Where it's like, look, you had to know that this is not what she wanted. You know, she kept protesting and saying, you know, fine. You'll see that, you know, the time she's, you know, and that she's running away when you keep hitting her and she flees. When she flees, you hit her some more. Like, come on. So you're pushing her to these levels of depravity. She runs away when you hit her. So then you start, that's the incident in the Intercontinental we're going to learn about. Is that she was fleeing a freak off because during, and the way this sessions would work is basically she's with the guy, and she said the reason she's doing it was that she wants intimate time with Sean. Now this is helpful to the defense, obviously. So she's willing to go through this sacrifice of being degraded for the purpose of being intimate with Sean, because she would be with the escorts. And she would be with him sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 4 hours. But then there would be a break. And then Sean would decide, okay, time for you and me to have some one-on-one time. And then after that, she would be sent back out to go back to the escort. So it was that in-between time that she was really craving. That's why she kept doing it. That's essentially what comes out of today's testimony. She said that she was not knowing who was going to be the next day. There was psychological abuse. And that she was given lots of busy work. What's busy work? Write music. Someone constantly telling you who to be. That's what she said. She's like, the situation was that someone constantly. And what is busy work? I had a list of songs, and I had to complete those tasks that had to be completed. And it's busy work because it's work that she had to produce music that he was never going to publish. And the reason that he had her doing all this work was, you know, he would say, oh, you're never going to make it. But that basically he never had any intention at all of producing the songs. And if he didn't produce any songs, he didn't have to pay her anything. So she's under contract that she's going to produce songs, and he only has to pay once he publishes it. But if he never publishes it, then he keeps telling her, write more songs. And at some point, you got to be like, fix it this way. right? I mean, come on. This is a good start. Let's see how we make this workable. I'm not writing 200 songs and none of them ever get produced, and they just go in the scrap heap of history. You know, you're this great music producer. That's what he's known as now, a great music producer. At a certain point, you say, stop doing it. You don't have what it takes. Right? I mean, he could have done that. So I think it makes sense to say that's busy work. Writing hundreds of songs, none of them ever get produced. She said the music wouldn't come, but the defendant advised that I had to say no to, while she wouldn't give her the music, she had to say no to opportunities in both music and modeling. So he wasn't letting her do any music, wasn't letting her do any modeling, and saying, I'm not going to produce any of this music, but you have to keep producing more music, which it sounds like he's got her like in a gilded cage. I'm going to pay for your housing. The housing has to be around the corner from me, where I can basically easily skip over to you whenever I want. And whenever I want and I skip over, there's going to be someone else who's going to be degrading you. You know, when you look at it, the only way that you can, I think, come to a situation like this where a boyfriend becomes someone who's acting criminally with the level of control is that you need, I think, a totality of circumstances that you're just like, this is just too much. Now, you can say that we haven't reached that totality of circumstances, but if you tell me there's no such thing as a totality of circumstances, I don't think that is fair either. I don't think that's a fair perspective. Some people will say, hey, how dare he tell her that she has to dress up in a costume? That's degrading her, and that's a crime. And there's some feminists out there who I'm sure would take that extreme position. I think that's insane. But I also think it's insane to say, no, well, she's dating and she said yes. And no matter what you did to get her to say yes, that you and I were criminally liable, I think that's insane too. There has to be some sort of happy medium. And I do think it should be closer towards 99 out of 100 times. It's not criminal, but there should be that 100th time. That's my perspective on this. And the question is this that 100th time? Is the level of control here that 100th time? I think that's a healthy way to look at this. I don't like Diddy with charges here, not raising its level of charges. It seems they're using RICO to extend statute limitations. Oh, that's definitely true. Has Joe not reviewed the NDA of Trump resort shooter? Nate has video on it. I haven't reviewed it, no. She had a contract that sucked. How many arrest first deals suck and end? That's not raising to charges presented. If he's telling her she has to do more work every day and not giving her any money, that even the law doesn't agree with. The law is that she has to keep working. You have to keep working. You have to keep working. You have to keep working. And you're not getting any compensation. And I'm gonna provide for your phone and take your phone whenever I want to. And you're gonna live in this house. Look, this could be your position. I'm just telling you, I'm not where you're at on that. Not sure you covered that Robert Barnes has a great theory. The assignment of the DOJ attorney from the Epstein case in order to keep the framework strictly on Diddy and not expose the powerful people in the honeypot operation. Well, I'll tell you this. From everything Cassie's described, this case has nothing to do with celebrities. Now, that could be because of Maureen Comey. And I've been lavishing praise on Maureen Comey's skills as a litigator, and I have routinely lavished criticism on how she will bend over backwards to protect the elite. And it's possible there are other charges that can be brought against Diddy that would involve celebrities. We're not going to have them here because they're not related to the charges. I can only deal with the charges that we have here. So Robert Barnes could be completely correct in what he's saying. It's not going to come up in this trial because there was never any charges. That's not part of the charges here. Maybe they should have been. So, but that's a complaint about the charges, not the way this case is prosecuted. Meaning once the bed is made the way this bed is made, they can only deal with what you have. You can say, hey, you're in the wrong house. It should be a different bed. And that could be correct. And likely is, given her history. So I'm not disagreeing with him. I'm simply saying we're in this house now. This house which has this indictment. So I can only look at, and given this indictment, I don't see how any celebrity is being brought in here when you're talking about potentially, and it could be very likely that they brought these specific charges and not other charges because they are looking to protect other people. And there's no way to do that if you bring those other charges. So if that's Robert Barnes' theory, I say, yeah, you know what? Makes a lot of sense. Good chance. And maybe it could have been part of the bed here if they threw it in as part of the RICO charges. He's extorting other celebrities. It was a political decision that we're not going to throw that as part of the RICO charges. Makes sense. Makes sense, but we can only deal right now with the bed that we have here. The bed that we have built here doesn't have any allegations about that. So, well, thank you for the super chat. And what you're saying, what you're both saying makes sense. She was in love with do anything to be the next Mrs. P. Diddy. The contract did not make her be in love and no actions and do actions. If she had no feelings to him, would this come out differently? Okay, so what I'm saying to you is this. So I'll ask you, Allegan News, tell me the answer to this question. If someone is in love with someone else, and that is a major part of the motivation that they're doing it, and at the same time, they are terrified that the guy is going to beat the snot out of them. And when they do something, they're like, hopefully he won't beat the snot out of me and will be nice to me and show me love. Is that criminal or not? Answer that question. Assuming that we can fairly establish that he's using both the carrot and the stick here, literally and literally, offering that, hey, you'll get carrot or you get stick. And she's like, well, if I do this, hopefully I'll get the carrot and I'll avoid getting the stick. So you tell me, is that coercive or not? Because the defense strategy is to tell us he's a very violent person when he gets jealous. And he's violent when he's on drugs. So, which he seems to be on drugs fairly frequently. So you tell me if she's acting this way, which I'll tell you anything, I would be shocked if it was not a combination of the two. I think that it's foolhardy to pretend that she wasn't acting in part out of love and desperation for his attention. And I think it's foolhardy to believe that she wasn't afraid that he was just going to beat her or punish her in other ways. Sometimes he would take away her electronics to punish her. No phone for you. Until when? Until the punishment ends. Oh, well, how do I not get punished? Well, set up a freak off and perform well for me. Okay, I'll do that. So she's making that choice now. I think a large part of the motivation of people it's probably criminal, but does it meet charges is the question. Focus on the law. How much is voluntary? And that's what I'm saying. Under the law, what if there's this duality here? Zelen says, at what point of control like this do you go from girlfriend to slave? She has no personal spaces. Her house is controlled. She's constantly drugged. She gets no money. That's what the state wants you to think. They should have you and Alga News fight it out. So, she said if she ignored his phone calls, it wouldn't stop until he found me. And then he'd be like, why didn't you answer? He would send security or one of his trusted assistants if she ignored texts or his calls. She listed off his security as being D-Rock, Fonz, Uncle Paulie, Fahim, Malik. Assistants as being David, Jane, Christina's someone, and Neil Dominic, and plenty of other people. And she said he saw other people and that she was insanely jealous. Part of the whole thing that she's in love with him. And she said, I didn't get it. And she was asked, what didn't you get? I didn't get that he's Puff Daddy. Puff Daddy has lots of women. She didn't get it back then. She didn't understand it. He's Puff Daddy. Puff Daddy has lots of women. That's the only time they referred to him as Puff Daddy. And she had a place on 60th and West End, and that was a gift from the defendant, and the rent was paid by the defendant, and then ultimately they moved to LA, and then there's and then the lawyer had, and this is when they start talking about where they lived. look I wrote here. Wasting time showing and detailing of LA locations. Bad lawyering. 15 minutes just wasted on this idiocy. You're boring us. Emily, you're boring us. And I know I'm being hypercritical, but when you're sitting on a hard pew for 7 hours, I want the lawyering to be better. I do. I want the lawyering better. Oh, I do think the cross will be lit. I think the cross will be lit. So he's trying to show that the defendant put what she's trying to do is trying to show that Sean put Cassie, it's not terrible lawyering, put her in locations that were within walking distance of his house so that he can always be there whenever he wanted to. He said the only place that she had, and here's another place she's going to get crossed on. So one place that she had in LA that she bought for herself, and she didn't get a fight from Diddy about getting a place for herself. I don't know where the heck she got her money from, but he had his own keys and used them whenever he wanted. He would come in unannounced. This is how she's answering questions. She sounded so weak and conflicted. Would he come in unannounced? Sometimes, not frequently, somewhat, not too much, a little too much. Somewhat. Like, you're just like, that's literally everything you just said. That's literally everything. What concerns did you have about him coming? Objection, rephrase, never mind, I'll move on. Emily. She said she recorded hundreds of songs. Some were released. Some were leaked. Some never saw the light of day. She made a mixtape in 2011. There were 9 albums that were not released, 0 compensation, and barely any when something got released. So basically his not releasing made her career stifle. Why were they not released? Why were they not released? She said, "You're asking me?" Diddy decided. When not working, I was recovering from partying. What were you doing not working? I was recovering from partying, and that freak-offs became her job. She'd be staying up days on end, doing drugs and having sex with strangers. And the freak-offs became like a weekly thing, and sometimes would last for 4 days. So she's basically either in a freak-off. This is like what she became. This is all she's doing. And that too, you have to ask at a certain point, if that's all you're subsisting for is just to do, make yourself healthy enough to do the next freak-off. What the heck is that? Like, seriously, what she's choosing? If someone chooses, and here's another question you can ask: if someone chooses to be a slave to you, like literally chooses to be a slave to you, and they're on drugs all the time. I mean, literally a slave. Would you be like, yeah, this is normal. She's just listening to her boyfriend. And she'd be continually recovering from the drugs, dehydration, and lack of sleep. By the way, now I just got to lunch. Like 4 hours left. Oh my God. We're getting to the bad stuff now. In case you're wondering, we're getting to the bad stuff. She has separate place, does not say security was always around. No, she said they always were around. Whenever he wanted her, they would show up if she didn't answer. Could leave anytime. If in the end she left, she could not get a phone, but can buy her own place. You can buy her own place? I don't know. I don't know. She didn't buy her own place. She was renting. She didn't buy anything. She didn't buy anything. I'm sure he gave her some sort of salary. We haven't gotten to that. She said the defendant would take her electronics personally, and D-Rock would come and she would get the items back. When would you get the items back? Well, it depends how long I was being punished. And then they're showing her pictures of different secretaries, and I don't know why we got this information, but I guess maybe they're witnesses who are going to come down the road. So she's probably that Miss Johnson was trying to set up as to how we'll know them later on, because she shows pictures of them saying, do you know them? Oh yeah, I worked with them, talk to them every day. So that's probably the foundation as to what that's there for. Then we got photos of security and all different people who work there, and she's identifying them. And she said, do you have safes? Yes, with cash, jewelry, videotapes, and SD cards and guns. Where did he have guns? In New York, LA, Miami, handguns. Now, the reason they're talking about guns in part here is A, to tell us that she had reason to be scared he's going to kill her, and B, because people in New York are afraid of guns. So a New York jury is likely to be afraid of guns and think that guns mean that you're about to kill someone. That is how New Yorkers think of people who own guns. That's just reality. It's probably not that way in your part of the world, but that's how many New Yorkers think of people who own guns. The reason people have guns is because they're looking to kill someone someday. That's the Northeast, or certainly the New York mentality. So they're probably thinking, the state is probably thinking, let's talk about his guns here, which certainly only helps play into the fact that she had reason to be scared of him. She said they had a freak off in LA one time, and then Suge Boy someone came in and said Suge Boy's down at Milk's Diner. So he packed up and went down, and I was crying because I was afraid that he was going to get in trouble or get hurt. And he said one time she was handed a gun. She was handed a gun, and when they went to a club, and we took some shrooms, and I was really ill, and I was terrified about given a gun to hold and put in my bag. We were in a club, and I was terrified it would go off, and I wouldn't let anybody near me. See, these are little incidents which I guess are designed to show the dangers of being around Diddy. I don't know. Or just to make us dislike him, or just think of him as being a menacing thug. I don't know why we got that story. Maybe one day we will know. I don't know why, though. She got back to the car. She gave it security. And she said, I always thought it was a bit of a scare tactic. So maybe that's the reason. That's the line that Emily Johnson was looking for from her. I don't know. Tell us about what happened with, it was Suge Knight is the guy's name. Suge Knight. When you say he packed up means he put on dark clothing and got his guns and went with his crew down. And he came back 35 minutes later. Tell us about voyeurism. This is where everything got very ugly. This is where we started getting really lurid details. Soon. We're like 10 minutes away from getting really lurid details. So voyeurism, that Sean described as a fantasy to see her with other men. And what are freak offs? He said that came up 6 months into a relationship. And I said, and this was to me my favorite question probably of the entire day, particularly because the answer came out really well. The question she asked is, which came first, the freak-offs or the physical abuse? And she said, the physical abuse, but very close in time. And the reason that is significant is because obviously, he's starting to hit me now. This is what he wants. I'm going to give him this so he doesn't hit me. So, to me, that was a great question. Which came first, the physical abuse or the freak-offs? And the fact that the physical abuse came first, at least according to her testimony, is certainly beneficial to the state. That the reason she's ever acquiescing to this on some level is because of fear of physical abuse. Welcome to be artist under contract. The album is under control label. She still seems to be in love and would do anything to maintain it, but many will lay down their lives for those they love. Well, I think it was when she was basically, I'm assuming that it was when the R word entered the conversation that she said, okay, we're done here. Security was there when she would not answer the phone. Is not security around 24/7. Cross will explore that gap. All right, maybe they will. I haven't seen Tenny on Cross yet. We'll see. It's going to be a long cross. I know that. And I don't know how well she's going to hold up because she doesn't seem as strong and independent as Tenny was claiming she is. So they asked, she was asked, why did you agree to it? She said, I was really afraid of upsetting him. I was 22. The first freak off was 2 or 3 months after we talked about his voyeurism. She said that she agreed because she wanted to make him happy, and it's her first adult relationship, and they were in LA. And when it happened, and they showed photos of the first escort, and she said, I don't remember his name. He was a dancer from Vegas. He was paid to dance and have intercourse with me. He gave me an ex-dolphin. Sean gave her the ex. Basically, Sean keeps giving her drugs anytime she's about to engage in anything here. And we wore masquerade mask, and he gave me very high, loose-side platform heels like a stripper. And he danced, and things got gradual, and everything, all the action that was engaged in was directed by Sean. And then they danced closer, and then we get into the oil. And they put oil on each other. This gets very, very graphic. And she said they would have multiple sessions. She referred to a session as basically every time a guy would complete, that's one session. You have your whole exchange, build up, completion, build up. An hour later, completion. 2 hours later, complete. 3 hours sometimes. And then that's the end of one session. And then every freak off was multiple sessions. How did you feel? Dirty, confused? I was confused by him, like why this was doing anything for him. But he seemed really happy with me, and that made me happy. And soon after that, after the first one, there's another freak off. And he said, what am I going to do? I can't say no. I didn't want to make him angry. And I regret telling me about this part of himself. Like that statement there, that's what she said. I'm a little star by that because I'm just like, what does that mean? I don't want him to make him angry and regret telling me about this part of himself. So this means it sounds like an act of love when you're saying that. Like you're trying to protect him from having his feelings hurt or that he's going to leave you. They're not at all like you're being coerced. Not at all. What was concerned, and then she says his anger and mood would change and he'd be upset with me. Okay, so when he's angry, is he going to hurt you or is he going to leave you? These are two very different things. Very different things. How often did you have these freak offs? It became weekly. When was the last freak off? In 2017 or 2018? And are you awake the whole time? Yes, always. Even that time they had for 4 days? Yep. How did you do that? Drugs. Did you want to sleep? Yes. What kind of drugs? X, Molly, cocaine. Senate and defendant decided when there was a freak out, when there would be a freak off, he would say, this is the last one. When it would end, he'd decide when they would end. He'd be like, okay, this is the last session. And when he would say that, we were hoping, please, yes, please let this be the last session because they've had multiple sessions. And it's like, okay, we'll have one more session and then you're done. I mean, it sounds like not just degrading, but an exhausting chore, which I can understand what Uzelian's saying. It feels like slavery. It starts to sound like slavery. It's like, no, you got to do another performance. I'm not done. And she said, I felt horrible about myself. That this is all I was for him. That I became this object. That this is all I was for him. Just this performer. When he's angry, he become violent. He get a changed look on his face. His quote, his eyes go black. The version I was in love with was no longer there. What parts did you enjoy? Time. And as soon as she started crying on the stand. What parts did you enjoy? The time I was with him. It was the only time I could get him. Was basically during a freak off in between degrading herself that she would spend some time with him. Tell him about not wanting to. So then she told him about not wanting to participate in the email. And, quote, didn't want anything bad to happen, that he got violent, and also didn't want to disappoint him. So, like I said, it really feels like there's a carrot and a stick here. So she tried talking to him gently. Why talk gently? Because I want him to know I wasn't judging him, but it made me feel worthless. His reaction? Dismissive. But what did he say? He said, I know you didn't want to do this anymore. You're so predictable. How many times did this happen? More than a handful of times. And then they go through the email. They read through the email the witness from the witness and defendant, which she calls him Pop Pop. Why do you call him Pop Pop? That was a nickname I gave him. Who came up with that? Well, he said he wanted me to give him a nickname. And how did you get to Pop Pop? Well, I mentioned that he asked me what I called my grandfather. And I said, Pop Pop. He goes, oh, I like that. Call me Pop Pop from now on, which is another way of exerting on some psychological level control. Like I'm a father figure in your life. That's my personal injective, my personal perspective of it. She was called Cece because that was the initials Cassie Combs, as if her last name was Combs. So he would call her Cece and Pop Pop. So we have this letter in April 19, 2010, where she sent him, maybe a text message. She sent a message saying, I really need to F. And he responded, who? You want to call someone? And were you looking for it to be someone else? No. And she said, I want you. Are you crazy? That's what she said to Diddy. And he said, just joking. They're going to stress me. And then she said, I don't want to have the whole freak. I don't want to do the freak off. And he said, it's predictable. Now you don't want to do it anymore. You're so predictable. And I knew this is definitely what it was. Okay, like there was no way I was going to get him. And that basically the only way I would get any time is if I did a freak off. So then in that exchange, she backpedaled. So she said, no, it's fine. I want to do freak offs, and in order to not make him angry. And at the very least, if you're the defense, you can say, so now he doesn't have mens rea. He doesn't realize that he believes you. You know, you tricked him into thinking that he convinced you. All right. Maybe that'll work for you. It could. I don't mean that sarcastically. Maybe it will work for him. That they would hide their identity whenever they had it. And they start talking about how they hide their identity. She would wear a hat and hide her face and mask and wear wigs. And until they were comfortable enough with the escort that they wouldn't wear a mask. But she said it was always obvious that to whoever showed up, they all knew within 5 minutes of getting there. As soon as he would start directing us, his voice is very distinctive. They knew it was him. So, and then she starts getting into clothes she had to wear with the dancer shoes, and that she would purchase lingerie and ask which outfit she should wear for him for the escort. And Diddy would choose that. She would have to get wax and nails and tan, and that when she would have these freak offs, she would have to spend a full day prepping to make sure she looked just right to satisfy Diddy that she looks right for the escort that's coming. Where'd you have these? Mostly in his home, sometimes my apartment, sometimes in hotels. There was hotels in New York, in Miami, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Vegas. She listed off 3 other cities. This is something, it seems like she did this like hundreds of times. Freakouts in it would be in the living room, and then the break time they would go into a room on the side. You also had to get supplies for this stuff, which meant baby oil or Astroglide or condoms. And it was very, very important that they were constantly glistening. You're not glistening enough. Glistening was a big word for Diddy. And the staff or sometimes the witness, Cassie herself or Sean would stock up on the lube and everything. Everyone had to use oil all the time. Oil on him, oil on the escort, oil on her, oil on Diddy. Everyone's got to be oiled all the time. The oil's got to be heated, and this is all per Diddy's direction. And she said literally every 5 minutes we had to apply more oil for hours. And what would he say? He'd say, you're too dry. You need to be glistening. It's just like you're hearing this stuff, and it's depressing. It's really depressing. It sounds so pathetic. Everyone in this story sounds pathetic. It sounds awful. And just listening to her recount this, it's so... If you ever saw the movie Requiem for a Dream, they reminded me of that. We're near the end of the movie. You're just looking at them like, none of you are human anymore. None of you are human. You're just like constantly, desperately trying to feed your base appetites that will never be sated. And that there's just, everyone involved here is pathetic. Everyone. The least of which is the escort. Hours of this. I was just like, oh, and so repetitive. At a certain point, defense counsel was objection, what? This is just excessive and cumulative. And the judge is like, perhaps we can move on from the baby oil. You've been talking about that. He's like, all right, let's talk about Astroglide. Literally, that's what she said. And I'm like, Read the room, Emily. Read the room. Just read the room. God. It's painful. It's a painful day. So she's getting the oil. Did security take her? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. See, that's... She admitted that she sometimes would arrange the freak off. Yeah, she did. Do you think that this is a human existence? Okay. All right. Look, you're free to have that opinion. I'm simply saying a lot of people would disagree with you. They started getting into the lighting and had their multicolored lights, and the defendant had to had assistant bring in. First, they used candles, and then later on, heavily scented candles. Later, they changed the lights. There'd be they would put bed sheets on all the furniture to try and avoid destroying everything. But whenever they finished everything, there was just be oil everywhere or candle wax. So they need linens and towels. They would have that brought up to the hotel room, extra linens and towels, and linens to cover the furniture. The next part I'm only going to talk about on locals. I'm not talking about this tonight because the next part is really disturbing. Okay, it's really disturbing. I don't, I like listening to this was awful. I don't want to talk about it really, and it was just basically. The next part here is arguably the most degrading part, okay? And I'll spare you the most graphic parts of it and tell you it involves multiple forms of fluid that had to be cleaned up from the hotel room because she has to perform whenever he wants, no matter what condition her body is in. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what day of the month it is. Doesn't matter. And sometimes it's involving involving golden moments. It's on her and degrading her and just every type of fluid that should not be associated with coitus somehow gets involved here. And it's either being rained on her or coming out of her. And it's just like whatever you can do to degrade a human, that's what she described here. And I think I've given enough on that. Hopefully I don't even have to talk about it on locals. That's not something I want. I'd rather just burn this page. But the experience she described as being disgusting, humiliating, and how she choked. And there was nothing on my face that said I was okay with anything that was happening here. And that she put up her hand to basically say stop. And she said, "Did you say no, though?" And she said, "No." She's like, "Why not?" She said, "I was squeamish and high." And in the moment when two guys are doing that to you, and you're on that much drugs, it doesn't really seem like you're able to do anything to make them stop. She said, "Why not say no?" She said, "I thought it was pretty obvious that I was not okay with any of this." Where did you find the escorts? How much you paid them? At this point, I actually had to take a break. I was like, I can't listen to this. I actually walked out for like 10 minutes. I was like, I can't. This. I feel dirty listening to this. Anyhow, when I came back, they're talking about how much they paid escorts, $6,000, mostly male. At 3:30 in the afternoon, with an hour and a half left to go, they start going through a binder of different pictures of escorts. Did you know this guy? Yeah. You know this guy? Yeah. What did you do with him? Where did you find him? What's his name? Where would you have a freak off with this guy? They ended up going through 5 guys, although the binder looked like it had a lot more than that. They talked about how Diddy took care of the travel agent, and they would travel interstate. Some would come from Vegas to Los Angeles, and that she would use ecstasy. And now we're getting back to talking about drugs again. How would you feel on ecstasy? It was dissociative. I'd become emotionless, and that's why I liked it, because this way I wouldn't have to think about what I was doing. Who provided the drugs? Diddy did. They talked about marijuana and ketamine and GHB and mushrooms and staff, and oh my gosh. I don't know how people are still listening to me talking about this. It's depressing. It's really depressing. Then they talk about a text message from April 6, 2013, when she's flying into London, and this was used to establish that Diddy was the one who's directing when she would take the drugs. And there's a text exchange going back and forth, which is like he's telling her, okay, did you take this drug yet? No, take the orange one. When? So we're supposed to be in 40 minutes, so do it in 20 minutes. Actually, take it now. Take the orange one now. And basically that he's the one directing her on the drug usage. That's there in the text message. And then she started explaining how she would feel under these different drugs, and that she would have to take drugs before and during, because the drugs only last for 3 or 4 hours, and then it starts to wear off. So you need to take more drugs in order to maintain the high and actually get through this degrading, humiliating, awful experience and push your way through into getting it done. I mean, it literally, it's like how do you take an act like this and basically make it as tortuous as possible? That's what it felt like listening to this. How do you make it as tortuous as possible? Well, you even wonder how Diddy can find enjoyment in this, unless he was finding enjoyment in the fact that he was controlling her. And at a certain point, it seemed like that, because he said sometimes, I think we're near the end here. Should be near the end. So why take these drugs? I wanted to be not present with what I was experiencing, because I wanted something. Because it was something I hated doing. How would you get the drugs? It would be Diddy's friend or Diddy's dealers or Diddy's assistant. And X would make her feel euphoric and sensual and aroused. And then the MDMAs, she would put in a drink. And it feels similar to X, but she would get sick from drugs. And almost every time before getting high, she would feel like vomiting. And even when she was vomiting, Diddy would be like, all right, get back out there. We're still waiting for you. You need to go out there. And it's just like, what do you want? What do you want? When you listen to this, you're like, what the heck do you want from this woman already? And Diddy would come to me in the bathroom and say, get out there, and continue the freak off while she's like vomiting from drugs. And she starts talking about the ketamine, which made her feel dissociative. GHB would make her feel drunk. Cocaine would make her heart race and scared her. Shrooms would make her feel psychedelic. And that sometimes she would try to speed things along, and whenever she tried speeding things along and getting the guy to finish like faster, like Diddy would say, no, you have to slow down. And that he would direct the escorts where they had to finish and leave their product, like where on her or in whatever. And but sometimes he would want her to take their product and go into the back room and rub it on his chest. I feel like I've crossed into a zone where I don't know how I talk about any of this on my channel. So yeah, that was something that he wanted her to do. So she would rub it on Sean's chest, on Sean's nipples. There'd be at least 2 to 3 sessions per freak off, sometimes 3 or 4 guys. Did you ever want these additional sessions? No. She's like, I really hate it when there's 3 or 4 guys because even one was more than I felt like I can handle per session. And then she realized that she was basically doing porn and that she was an object. And for those, when there's multiple guys, it felt that much more porn-like she's performing for all of them, trying to make sure that she's keeping them all pleasured. If he wasn't involved, and so when he wasn't involved, sometimes he would get into the action himself. When he wasn't, he would be in a corner, the other room, and he would be talking, giving whatever he would talking about, asking her about what she was experiencing while she was going through these freak offs. Just picture Gary Coleman as an old man, if that helps. Sometimes they would be on FaceTime, and sometimes he wouldn't be in the room. He would just be on FaceTime, and sometimes it felt like he wasn't even paying attention, and they would just stop. This to me felt very controlling. I'm not even there, but you're going to be doing this now. And I might not even be paying attention, but you're just I want you doing that. That, to me, is one of the most controlling things in the world. Where it's no, you're just an animal who needs to be performing because I want you to be performing now. And yeah, you know what? At a certain point, you have to say, is she too psychological? Who the heck does that? That's not even for loving. What the heck is happening here? Why would any of this be happening? It's almost no, I don't. I mean, I get what you're saying, Alec, and I'm just I don't see how someone can even make this as a choice. This is not a choice. Someone chooses to have you cut off their hand. That's not making a choice. I don't know. It's crazy. This is Loverboy case, but U.S. law does not have that law. They're trying to force it under RICO. I think many are into odd things with body fluid. Not saying no will be hit and cross. Joe, did you find jury makeup, race, gender, etc.? Also, I heard the prosecution is 6 white ladies. Do you think that will factor in? Prosecution is all white women. They did great the first time. It was always all white women. So, but it wasn't Emily Johnson. 10-4, go. 10-4, Joe. We're good. Most importantly, why did you keep attending? You can't pay or threaten me enough. She was in love with him. And I think she became something. She ended up leaving. We don't really even get into how she's leaving. The only reason I gave you the detail about all that fluids and stuff like that is because I think it's relevant. I think it's relevant as far as just the level of control and depravity that he brought her to. Because I think that becomes a factor where you're just is there ever a level that it's some people will say there is no level. Josh, you're way too pure for this mess. You got to run the other way. Yeah, seriously. I feel damaged. This was a painful thing. It was a very painful thing to listen to today. Bob Loves Last says, no matter what happens in this Diddy case, his so-called famous life is over. That in itself is good, just my opinion. He's a monster, this guy. His own says, he knows his power and fame will keep people around him and help hide what he was doing. I'm also sure while he was doing this, other celebs knew and she was getting introduced to them. Possibly. We'll see. That'll probably come up on cross too. No matter what happens in this Diddy case, his so-called famous life is over. That is good. Amen. It's true. Troy says, can you check your XDM? I sent DM, need help. I'll try to check after the show. I'm almost done here. Then they talked about how he was recording her. She didn't want to be recorded. He wanted deleted and frequently asked him to delete it. And sometimes he would record from her own phone and that she would delete it. And I have questions about that, which I'm sure are going to come up on Cross. I'm sure it's going to come across. So that's why I'm bringing this to you. She said that if she ever found it on her phone, it'd be deleted. But according to the defense, they got the freak-off videos from her phone. So I thought you said you deleted everything that was on your phone because she was so embarrassed and hated that it was on her phone. Why would it be on your phone, she's asked. Well, it was just the nearest one there. So he would record from her phone. Then they talked about, so apparently she was in a movie. I don't know what this movie was. For one reason, this is the one thing Emily doesn't give us. What movie? I don't know. She was going, or maybe she was going to a premiere. I don't know if it's her own movie, but she was going to some premiere in LA. And this is right before the Intercontinental. So she sent a text message saying, baby, where he said that he wanted to have a freak off. And she said, baby, I want a freak off. I want a freak off so bad, but I don't want to mess my body up. Meaning that she was afraid. She was like looking to get, she said that she was, this is trying to take the sting out of what they're expecting to come on Cross, that she wrote, I want to freak off so bad, but I don't want to mess my body up. She said, why? Because I was worried that my premiere would be ruined. And I was playing a balancing act and trying to do damage control. That if he thinks that I'm disappointed, I can't do a freak off, in that case, he's not going to be mad and punish me. So, and I said that because I didn't want him thinking I didn't want to. This is something she's definitely going to get hit on Cross. So but then she ends up going to a freak off, and I don't even know if this is the same time or a different time because Emily's not good at this. And she's in the Intercontinental doing a freak off, and she gets hit by Diddy in the eye and gets a black eye. And that's when she runs away. And this is the infamous video where she runs down the hall, goes to the elevator bank, and he comes running after her wearing nothing but a towel, yanks her by the hoodie, throws her on the floor, and kicks her a couple of times before he tries dragging her down this long corridor. She gets up, and then he takes some bags from her 2 bags that she had run off with, throws them back into the hotel room, goes storming back down the hotel room. She runs back into the elevator bank, and when she goes into the elevator bank, she calls on the house phone for security. And she's walking us through this whole video as to how this whole thing went down when we hit 5 o'clock. And that's where we're up to. So we're in the middle of the story of when Officer Flores comes up. That's where we're at. It's literally painful. It's painful. People will lay down own life for love. This is much less than that. Why is lover boy case? Is love control under the law? Yeah, look, I don't know if you're trying to convince me that there's no such thing as someone who could love someone being illegally controlled. It seems like you really want me to go there. And I'm telling you, I cannot go there. I think it should be very, very rare. But I think you're holding, and I'm not passing judgment on what your perspective is on this. I just cannot get to that level. And no matter what you do, because unless you're drowning her, that if you get her to say yes, no matter what you do to get her to say yes, it's never criminal. Which is that's what it feels like to me. Your position is, and I cannot embrace that position. I don't think that's. I disagree. I don't think that's a correct position to take, and that's very different from saying, "Oh, that if you weaponize your love to get someone to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do, that makes it a crime." I'm not saying anything like that. I'm simply saying that you have to appreciate totality of circumstances to some degree, and even if you don't think that that's what will reach that totality here, but. I don't know. I'm starting to feel as if you're taking this very personally, like this case. And I don't understand why. Like you're trying to say, well, look, she could have said no. So if she had, if she didn't have to buy, you're saying she didn't have to buy the lube. So when she buys the lube, that means she's okay with it. Okay. So if she didn't buy the lube, would you say now we can send him to jail? Because I don't think you would. Like that's why I'm not sure what we're talking, just principally and philosophically. We can talk about this individual case, or we can talk principally and philosophically. And I feel as if you're going back and forth between principally and philosophically and talking about this specific case. Because if you're talking principally and philosophically, then you wouldn't be pointing to the fact that, well, since she bought the lube, that means that now he's innocent. Like, that's where I'm getting confused about here. You can say there's no such thing. Once part of the factor here is that she's doing it out of love, well, then he can't hold him accountable. All right. And I'm simply saying I cannot get to that level. I'm not at that level. And you're not alone in that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being at that perspective. I'm simply saying that's not where I'm at. I think that sometimes in some extreme circumstances, there is a concept of like, you're controlling her in ways that are completely unhealthy for everyone involved here. And that, that she's not really, that she's not employing reason. She's not employing any logic here. Let's just say let's assume for a second she wasn't retarded. Okay, but she was very slow. Would you say the same thing? You're like, yeah, you know what? If you do this, then maybe I'll give you money. And she said, oh, okay, fine, I'll do it. And you don't give her money, and you do that 10,000 times, maybe, and every time, like, really? Oh, okay, fine, I'll do it. It's up to me. I might not give you the money. All right. Well, she chose to do it. No one told her, and she knew she might not get it. No matter how stupid she is, it's not, no matter how slow, like she can have literally an IQ like just above retarded, but it's like, no, she chose to do it. Like, to me, I don't know. I think that's at a certain point you have to say this is, and that in certain ways is actually less than this. I don't know. I'm just telling you where I'm at. I'm not even saying he's guilty. You never heard me say here he's guilty. I'm simply saying that what was described today was horrific. And I can at least now see an argument as to how she's being controlled. And on some level, it definitely feels like I made a list. You see this list here? There's a list I was reading off these are all the things he was controlling here. When, where, how long, what she would wear, the lingerie, the nails, what to wear, the wig, the mask, how she should look, what ambiance it should be, the darkness, the candle lighting versus having the whole lighting situation, who she could be. It has to be black eyes. What to stock for the freak out. It has to be Astroglide and Johnson's baby oil. Specifically, it's got to be that. And how to pregame, what type of drugs and what type of guy we need to have here and how they would perform step by step. And oil, more oil every 5 minutes. You need to put on oil. And when she has to go back in, even if she's vomiting, or when to perform, or how many sessions. And if he says another session, just one more session, come on, you can gut this one out. Let's finish strong here. That was part of the language they use. Let's finish strong. That's something that she's got to do also. And when he's going to step in himself, when he's not going to, when he's going to take her into another back room, when he's going to take Cassie along, when he won't, and when she needs to take more drugs because the drugs are starting to wear off, or you look a little sluggish, or you look a little tired. Maybe you need to take some cocaine now because you look a little tired, and that'll help amp you up. And when to call it quits, and when to recording, what to do with those recordings. These are just some of the things. This is not even everything. This doesn't even include the money or what levels or what name she's allowed to call him. I'm just saying, at a certain point, you say to yourself, she's, you can tell me that this is, you want to call a lover boy complex or something like that, as if I can understand someone saying this is just a ridiculous, insane level of control here, control leading to her sexual degradation involving other people, where she's basically being trafficked to other people for his amusement, even if he's not making money out of it, but it's for his entertainment that she's being trafficked to others. I can understand someone saying that. Does that mean that I think he should be held guilty? I'm not sitting on the jury. I don't know. And I'm not pushing for a conviction. I'm not pushing for an acquittal. I'm simply saying I very much can see your side, Allegan. I can very much see the other side. I don't like Diddy, but how does this fit the law will be the question. What 2 laws do you break to make it RICO? Oh, he broke a lot of laws. He broke a lot of laws, potentially. I don't like the idea of using RICO for this. But you're telling me that we're talking now about the trafficking. Now you're going to the RICO. That's RICO. Trafficking is one of the elements of the RICO. It's one of the crimes, supposedly. But, I mean, the domestic violence, the bribery, there's a lot of different crimes there. Obstruction of justice, in theory, which I don't think was obstruction, personally. Joe, let me remember, this might be a Rumble Locals only case considering what little we have already. Any activities at the hotel surveillance footage could be considered involuntary. I don't know. Any activities at the hotel surveillance footage would be considered involuntary actions on her part. You have the proof at that point. That was in 2014. Wait. No, March 5th, 2016. It was 9 years ago. 2016. I think that's a fair point, too. You think that she could just leave? She was trying to leave a freak off there. If she's in the middle and she changes her mind and she sees that she leaves too early, he comes running after her, throws her to the floor and kicks her. You think that that's not a factor as far as whether or not she's under an illegal level of control? That's what happens when she leaves in the middle of freak off. Yeah, you're saying she could leave. Okay, it's not in the middle of freak off. But she should be able to make a decision in the middle of freak off saying, I want to stop. I think you would agree with that, Allegan. When she made that decision at the Intercontinental, he literally was dragging. She had to call. The only reason she was saved is because she called security, and security had to calm him down and say she's leaving. So, fears that maybe she was under threat of duress, that seemed to be validated in the Intercontinental video. It's a good point there, Dave. Whew. We made it through. I don't think you're right, Judge Maddie, that if this is true, you can charge every rich man in the world. I don't think that's true at all. Not every rich man in the world is bashing a woman's face in, and they get mad. That's a good question. They say that part of the reason that they came around is because that Intercontinental video came out. Although I don't know when it came out. It's 6 years old. Control request is the question. How did he control her, love or by force? Just previewing what I expect defense to be based on her wholesome testimony. RICO has specific laws, not all as predicates. So you agree to trafficking, but not the RICO? Anyway, good night, Jim. And I'm going to be wrapping up here too. I need sleep. I have to get up in like 6 hours. Thank you, brother. Thank you much. All right. This might have been the most painful day of testimony I can remember ever just listening to. This was rough. And I actually have a feeling that Allegan is correct. The cross is going to be worse. I think cross is going to be way worse. I'm dreading the cross here because I think she's going to be a mess on cross. I think she's going to be a mess. I think it's going to be emotional. I think it's going to be a mess. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll see you all in the morning. I'm getting out of here. I'm 3 hours in. I meant to do a 2-hour show. Good night, you all. And don't eat the bugs. Don't eat the bugs. And, yeah, lab me, not for you, they, them. Good night. Godspeed.